A very good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf. Good morning from me as well. Let's get to it.
The US says there's been tremendous progress on Ukraine peace talks in Geneva, but more time is needed ahead of Trump's Thursday deadline.
David Cameron reveals he's been successfully treated for prostate cancer and enjoys widespread calls for a national screening programme.
The tax warning from British business for Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the week will finally find out what's going to be in the budget.
Or her predecessor, Jeremy Hunt, will be here later this hour to weigh up the challenge facing the country's finances.
We're joined by the man who first uncovered the lies being told to Princess Diana in the BBC Panorama interview that would then rock the royal family and the world.
Hello, good morning. The White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, says that tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. Now, those talks are, of course, focusing on President Trump's 28-point plan, which has been panned by Ukraine and Europe as a capitulation to Russia.
We're also waiting to hear whether President Trump will meet European leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, in Washington. But there are reports this morning that President Zelensky may travel to the White House this week. Here was Marco Rubio last night.
I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon. You know, whether it's Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Monday of the following week, we want it to be soon because people are going to, between today and the time we deal with this, more people are going to die. More destruction is going to happen. Our goal is to end this war as soon as possible, but we need a little more time.
Sorry, let's bring in Ivor Bennett. I was already got to halfway through my thought for you. I was so eager to pose it. Ivor Bennett is with us from Moscow. We had a joint statement from the US and Ukraine expressing less pessimism than before last night. I guess, do we really believe the Ukrainians are happy with this until we hear President Zelensky say it himself?
Yeah, morning, Wilf. Morning, Sophie. It has been a dizzying 24, 48 hours of diplomacy, hasn't it? First, there was all the talks in Johannesburg on Saturday at the G20, then in Geneva. Those were the crunch talks yesterday between US and Ukrainian officials as Ukraine tries to alter what's on the table at the moment. As you say, very positive words came out of it at the end, particularly from Marco Rubio, words like tremendous, optimistic, productive, and then this joint statement where they said they'd come up with a refined peace framework. Supposedly it offers strength and security guarantees, but the details are scant. We still don't really know how they're going to get round the key points of differences and what Ukraine doesn't like about the current offer, particularly on the issue of territory. That's the most thorny issue. The current 28-point plan that the US drew up with Russia after secret talks with them, that requires Ukraine to hand over all of the Donbass, including territory that they currently occupy, which Russian forces don't occupy. And for them, for Kiev, that is, of course, an indelible red line that they've long said they would not cross. And similarly, this idea of putting caps on their army, they say that will just leave them vulnerable to future Russian attacks. Now, in terms of time frame, where we go from here, well, the White House, remember, was trying to push Ukraine into agreeing something by Thursday to get it all done by Thanksgiving. That deadline seems to have softened somewhat, but there is still impetus for them to get something done soon. So talks will continue between Ukrainian and American officials. But the key player, Marco Rubio, who you just heard from, he's flown back home, so it's unclear how meaningful these talks in Geneva will be today. I think the key kind of crunch meeting might be later in the week. There are reports that Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, will be heading to Washington again, where he's expected to meet Donald Trump. So all eyes on that. Also, as you say, potentially European officials and leaders going to the States, maybe American officials coming here. Lots and lots of moving parts still.
Eva, thank you very much indeed, Eva Bennett, then, on those talks. Will they be any different from the ones that we've had before? It feels like it's still playing out, doesn't it?
Now, David Cameron has revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer and has now been given the all clear.
The former Prime Minister told The Times that he got the diagnosis, this is quite interesting, after his wife, Samantha, urged him to make an appointment.
More than 63,000 men are diagnosed with the disease every year.
And more than 12,000 of those men die. It is worth noting as well that 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed at some point in their lifetime. So these are really big numbers.
Well, Oliver's here with us to talk a little bit more about this. And Oliver, I think striking revelation, of course, but also just the way it all came about. He was listening to a radio interview, or his wife was listening to a radio interview?
His wife was listening to the radio interview with the founder of Soho House, who was talking about his own journey. And she urged him to go to the GP and get this checked out and get all of these tests done, which is exactly what he's done. And then Lord Cameron saying that now's the time for him to speak out because he's got a platform and this is a debate that the country should be happening, that the country should be having. He says that, you know, there's new technologies that have come about, and previously where the debate had been about whether the cost was at the right positioning for the NHS to roll out such a screening programme, he thinks that with this new technology, it's cheap enough now for the NHS to do exactly that.
Is there any signs that that's going to happen, that the NHS is going to widen it out?
Well, interestingly enough, the National Screening Committee, which is the government's expert panel, is going to be meeting on Thursday, and there are some that believe that the timing could be just about right for this to happen, but not all of the medical community agrees. Some people say that the numbers simply don't stack up, or statistically, it is not supported because, you know, prostate cancer can live benign in men's bodies for quite a long time. And there's that debate about whether you tackle it or whether you just let it sort of live undiagnosed.
That's interesting.
Tell us just a couple of the things that stood out for you from the interview he's given.
Well, I mean, look, we've got a few of the quotes that we can bring up. So it's a very, very personal interview that he did with The Times. And in it, he said, let's be honest, men are not very good at talking about their health. We tend to put things off. We're embarrassed to talk about something like the prostate because it's so intricately connected with sexual health and everything else. Goes on to say, I sort of thought, well, this has happened to you and you should lend your voice to it. And then says, I know it's not a slam dunk. There are respectable arguments against a screening programme, but it seems to me that quite a lot of things have changed over the last few years. So, look, we'll have to wait and see until what happens on Thursday, but it's one of those things that quite a lot of people, I feel, across the country are keen to talk about cancer now. Look at what's happened in recent years where we've had various celebrities, royals who've been diagnosed with cancer, and you see that huge spike normally off the back of it where these cancer companies, charities will get a huge amount of interest following people coming out and speaking about it so publicly.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while ago, but I always remember with Jay Goody, you know, when she spoke about her, you know, diagnosis and how it led to this huge number of women coming forward and getting smear tests as a result. It can make a huge difference, right? Thanks very much.
Oliver, great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, it's felt like the longest run-up to a budget in history. We're finally going to find out what's happening when Rachel Reeves unveils her plans on Wednesday. It's time for a little bit more lobbying, though. Before that, the Confederation of British Industry, the country's most influential business group, is getting in on that lobbying.
So the chief executive of the CBI is going to warn today the government's got to change course and take some difficult decisions to avoid what they're calling a death by 1,000 taxes. Well, Maria's here. Great to have you. Firstly, what do you make of what the CBI is saying?
So what the CBI are basically trying to say is we're 2 days out from a budget and they want Rachel Reeves to listen up and hear their concerns. They are worried about the cost of energy for businesses. They are worried about the workers' rights bill. And they say that that is putting extra burdens, pressures and costs on business, which is going to essentially dampen growth. So what they're arguing is actually, if Rachel Reeves wants the growth that we keep hearing her talk about for 18 months now, we've heard growth, growth, growth. We have had very little growth. What they're saying is it's business that drives that growth. And therefore, if that's what she really wants, she has to give us what we need. Of course, they would say that. But nonetheless, they are trying to kind of get their voices heard. We've got Peter Kyle, the business secretary, who I know you'll be speaking to. He's also giving a speech at the conference.
It would be a bit awkward then.
Yeah, exactly. And also businesses could be forgiven for perhaps not always taking everything seriously that Peter Kyle might say, considering that only a year ago, when Rachel Reeves addressed the CBI, she said to them, I'm not going to go back with more borrowing and more taxes. And now it looks like she is. So they're going to think to themselves, hold on a second, a year ago we were told one thing and you did another. what are you going to say today, and is that actually worth the paper it's written on?
Is the budget written, or is it still subject to change?
By now it will be written.
Because, I mean, there's, I guess, a point for the CBI. Perhaps could have scheduled your conference for a few weeks earlier if you're going to have an impact. But I guess the other point on this is the extent to which, after all of the craziness of the last month or so, does she have a bit of downtime now, Rachel Reeves? I guess not just to prepare for the delivery, but to try and make sure she can deliver the sort of narrative behind it as well as possible. Because that is actually going to be almost as important as the line items. Can she sell it?
Totally, that's 50% of the job, right? Can you sell it to the public? For instance, things like the two-child benefit cap. We're expecting that to be lifted. If you look at the polling, actually the majority of the public don't want it lifted. The majority of Labour voters don't want it lifted. So how do you sell that to a public that doesn't want that policy? That kind of stuff actually is just as important, as you say, as the policies themselves. Because if you can't sell them, never mind if you can't sell them to your own backbenchers, then everything starts to fall apart. So it is actually the political job is still very much underfoot and will be weeks after the budget as well. It's not going to end as soon as she delivers it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mari, thank you so much. Mari, speaking to us there about what to expect on the budget. Now, of course, I think it's probably fair to say there's been more focus on this upcoming budget than anyone that I can remember in recent years. I think that's honestly the case. And much of it is because we know just how painful it's going to be. Well,
our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, has been to Halifax in West Yorkshire to see what people really want to see this week and whether they think they're going to get it.
I think that we're seen as statistics. I think that we're always the afterthought, so things cuts, they're always done, but it's always us that are impeded. It's always looked at, well, if we take that from there, that might paint this picture, but the ramifications that have for people's livelihood, for people's mental health, for people's passion and drive, it's such a struggle. It's such a struggle.
Everyone's skidding. It's insane, right? I mean, we don't have kids. We rent a one-bedroom flat. Yeah, we go out quite a bit. We've got a bit of money to spare.
I'd say that we're quite lucky and that we both have fairly well-paid jobs. I don't think that's the same for the majority of my friends, people my age.
It makes it very difficult to think. Everything just seems to be getting hard to save for a house, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
If there was something that could be done that would lift mood, would solve some of these issues.
Can we stop triple locking the pensions, please?
Yeah, I mean, as a young person.
Stop giving pensioners everything out there. For God's sake.
It's interesting, listening to people's concerns. And I guess the difficulty is that everyone's going to have different things that they come into the budget wanting. The one thing that I guess I would say is it feels that there was a time when we thought Rachel Reeves was going to do something like put up income tax, right? That was kind of what it felt like they were trailing us towards. Another thing that other people are calling for would be big cuts to spending, so welfare or whatever it may be. But the sense that I'm getting now, and I'm not sure if you're the same, is that it's not going to necessarily be this big-ticket, difficult decision. Mm-hmm. It's more kind of smorgasbord of things that are easier to sell. And there have been, I have to say, a growing number of economists and also business leaders like the CBI coming out saying that that is not necessarily the right approach, that a kind of smorgasbord of smaller things could end up being more distorting for the economy than if they just, took the medicine, put up income tax, cut the welfare bill, whatever it is, difficult things to sell politically, really difficult, but perhaps economically the better idea.
Definitely. I think that's been the message from business and economists for quite a time. And it looks, but we don't know yet, like they've decided they're going to take more economic pain rather than political pain. And obviously breaching a manifesto pledge would be a big amount of political pain to take. But that's a choice if you decide to do that. And it might well just delay taking both types of pain for down the line. And is it better to face up to it sooner rather than later? I think, the other thing just to snapshot today versus a year ago is last year, taxes went up to fund spending increases. Largely, you can argue around the edges, did they match each other? Not quite. But you got a big boost in spending as well. This time, there might be a couple of little spending boosts, but basically taxes are going up to fill a hole that's been created because growth is disappointed or whatever else. Mm-hmm. So you're also not going to get the sort of upside that you normally get when taxes go up. Obviously, no one likes taxes going up, but usually it comes with a spending increase, and that can then boost the economy. So we put way too much weight on economic forecasts, always, and they're almost always wrong because it's almost impossible to do. But we're going to get an update of that on Wednesday as well. And it's going to be interesting to see the extent to which growth forecasts might come down again. We'll weigh it all up on Wednesday. But you never want to have to put up taxes. You definitely don't want to have to put up taxes without also boosting spending. And so it's a really tough day for the Chancellor on Wednesday.
Yeah, and we'll finally find out what it means for all of us and for the country as well. There'll be an awful lot of coverage from us about this week. Right, let's talk kids, social media and screen time next, because we've got some new research out today suggesting that some children are arriving at primary school unable to talk properly, but able to use smartphones.
The Times is today citing a teacher who told the Pairs Commission about their concerns, which also include older kids self-diagnosing ADHD after seeing content online on the topic. I mean, you can't really talk about this topic enough, the extent to which screens are addictive, they capture kids' attention, and clearly are taking, I mean, you don't have to be an expert to do a survey to take their attention away from more traditional means of learnings and the kind of power behind them.
The other point I would make is there has been an explosion in what they call in the trade edtech. So this is basically schools using screens for kids' learning. It can be done in the classroom, but also increasingly done at home. So homework just set on phones, or apps like gamifying kind of learning by, apps like Doodle Maths or Times Table Rockstars or whatever it is, including for pretty young kids as well. And so it is, I don't know, some people might say, look, this is good, it helps teachers marking, we need to accept that kids are growing up in a world that is digital. But then I guess the flip side is, you can't really have teachers complaining about kids using screens at a time when so much of their learning, dictated by the schools themselves, is also done online. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I think, it was a moment in the pandemic where EdTech was a saviour.
Yeah.
And that was great. But I think it's definitely been extrapolated too far in that regard.
Let us know what you think about this. It's an interesting one. mornings@sky.uk is the email, mornings@sky.uk. Me or Wilf will reply. Don't know which one you prefer, but it's a bit of a lottery. You can also follow us on social media as well too. Now it's budget week, which means there is a frenzy of stories about what the Chancellor is going to do and what it means for all of us. And what budget week also means is a whole string of political interviews where someone says, I'm really sorry, I can't answer that. You're going to have to wait to hear what the Chancellor says on Wednesday. I hate those interviews. They're a waste of everyone's time. So with our next guest, Peter Carl, the Business Secretary, I am going to try and not do that. There is another reason for not doing it as well, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. This fear by economists that the government's going to duck some difficult choices, a smorgasbord of tinkering that could actually do more economic harm than biting a bullet and doing something big, like putting up income tax or cutting spending. But these things have become impossible, because of politics, particularly for a PM facing leadership speculation, which is potentially bad for the country. And it's down to a lot of people, the lack of bravery from the government, the political point scoring of the opposition, the have your cake and eat it stance of some Labour MPs. But if we're honest, it's also down to us journalists as well. The climate we create by the way we cover stories. So I'm not going to ask 10 times if the minister's going to rule out tax rises, and I'm not going to spend the entire interview either talking about whether they're going to break a manifesto pledge, which again is talking about the politics rather than what is actually right for the country. And it might take a little bit more honesty and openness from all of us involved, because right now we do need our politicians to do what's right rather than what's easy. So, with that in mind, the Labour MP, Peter Carl, joins us now, the Business Secretary. Great to have you on the programme. Big week.
It is a very big week. It is a very big week. And with you doing that introduction, by not asking those questions, I'm sure the questions that you are going to ask me are going to be much more difficult to answer.
Well, that's it. And we'll hopefully have a bit more of an honest conversation, right?
Let's
about that's the aim anyway. The reason I was talking about some economists, some business leaders saying they're going to duck the difficult decisions is partly from what the CBI have said today. The business group, you're talking at their conference, which could be a bit awkward, of course.
I'm looking forward to it.
Their boss has come out to say the government needs to change course and make hard choices to avoid death by 1,000 taxes. What would you say to that?
I say that, actually, I agree, we do have to make hard choices. I think we've seen, because of the period of instability that we have come into as a government, that we have to break out of this awful cycle of high tax and low growth. Now, you can't change that overnight, because we do need to. We've inherited that sort of vice-like grip on our economy, that spiral that we inherited. The only way we're going to get out of that is by getting growth into the economy, by doing things very, very differently. Now, we've already found ways of investing in the economy, in our public services. We've increased our R&D budget. We've got big infrastructure projects off the ground. But I think we have to go further. And I think in the coming...
Well, growth hasn't gone up, has it? It sounds like it.
Well, actually, Sophie, it has. We were the fastest growing economy for the first 6 months of this year in the whole of the G7.
What was growth?
So
what was growth?
Well, it was about 0.3% per quarter. So
that's what I mean. It's like, it sounds really great when you say it's the biggest bit coming.
Sophie, don't get me wrong.
It's like a pancake.
Don't get me wrong. We need much more growth in our economy. The Chancellor has admitted this. I, as Business Secretary, is saying it. We need much higher growth, and we will be doubling down on that. Now, you have to get the fundamentals of that right. We had broken public services. You can't have growth when you've got 5 million people who are out of work because of sickness. You can't have growth when the transport infrastructure isn't working. These are the things that government can do collectively to deliver the foundations for growth. But let's not kid ourselves. That growth will come from business. Now, we've had the industrial strategy, 10-year stability in policy making. I today am announcing a scheme that's going to lower the cost of electricity by 25% for 7,000 businesses.
Just on that, since you brought it up, you say you're cutting electricity bills for manufacturers by up to 25%. From what? 25% from what?
Well, 25% from where the cost will be at the start, where the scheme comes in. Now, we're consulting on that at the moment. We're launching the consultation. We'll have to legislate for it. We'll have to consult for it. But when we bring that scheme in...
Because the reason I'm asking that is because, you know, Ed Miliband promised to cut bills by £300, but I mean, we don't... £400 from what? So we have no way of judging whether that's actually happened.
Yes, so what we're doing is looking at the government side of the costs on business. And there's a lot of work we can do there. So we've gone through, it is an incredibly difficult and complicated energy system that we have here, and the incentives and some of the charges that the government is responsible for. We're doing things like making sure that the way that we judge inflation throughout the system is now standardised and it's moved to a more standard system. These are very nerdy, very sort of down in the roots of things, but it does mean that for those 7,000 businesses, that we will be able to reduce their energy costs by 25%. That is quite extraordinary. It will bring us much more into line with the EU average for costs. It won't get there entirely, but we'll start moving in that direction. It'll make us more competitive so that people can start using, and businesses can start using, those 3 great trade deals that we've struck in the last year. And it will mean that it'll lower the costs for consumers, again, driving that virtuous circle of getting growth into the economy that we need.
You were saying there that growth comes from business leaders and from businesses, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wondered, because we did have the news that Lakshmi Mittal is leaving the UK. Now, he's a billionaire. He's topped the rich list several times. You know, he's also previously donated to the Labour Party, I should say. And this, I guess this is a genuine question. Are you worried, honestly, about some of the super rich leaving the UK, or if they're not prepared to pay the amount of taxes that you think they should, do you not really care?
I am worried whenever somebody feels that they have to leave the UK in order to succeed. You know, we've gone through a period where loads of doctors, thousands of doctors, have left the country.
But just specifically, on the kind of billionaire thing, right?
No, I understand. So whenever anyone needs to leave the UK to succeed, I think it's a worry. What I don't want to do is be, as a country, just focus just on the billionaires, because there are other people that have needed to leave. There are people starting businesses that have gone to America, actually in their droves, because they haven't had the funding that they need in this country to succeed. And that is something that we are fundamentally stopping the need for by recapitalising the markets here and putting a lot of work in for those spin-outs and those start-ups, those scale-up companies.
Do you acknowledge that some of it is because of the tax decisions of this Labour government?
I do.
You do?
Yes,
is that
I do. Now, I'm not going to duck the fact that we have put up taxes and we've closed some of the loopholes for non-DOMs. On the other hand, we've set up this a global talent task force. We have set up a global talent visa. We are making it easier for people to come here who have high talents. Now, some people aren't going to leave because they were here because of the way that the old non-DOM system worked. There are other people who are coming to this country because of the excitement that's in our economy at the moment, the fact we're investing in AI, that people like Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, the biggest company in the world, says we're going through a Goldilocks moment as a country when it comes to AI. So lots of people are coming here because of the new excitement in our country. But I accept, because of some of the decisions we've made, like closing those non-dom tax loopholes, some people will feel the need to leave.
Can I ask you about David Cameron? He's spoken about being diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he's calling for a targeted screening programme. And I'm particularly interested because you talk a lot about AI, right, and about new tech, and you've spoken about its use in screening as well. Is that something that you think we should be much more ambitious about?
Most hospitals now have AI built into their radiography departments. I went to the first one, which was actually a couple of years ago at Huddersfield Hospital. And the thing that struck me there was that, as it was being described to me, as I saw patients going through it, I just kept thinking about my mum. My mum had died a decade or so earlier. She had been scanned 3 times, and all 3 times it missed the cancer that was growing within her. She collapsed and died a few weeks later. There is no question in my mind that if she was scanned using the modern scanning techniques used in most hospitals in the UK now, she would be alive today. When you put that into the context of where technology is going, in the next decade, it could well be that we start solving diseases entirely by applying the latest AI technology to the way that drug discovery and medical advancements are happening. So we could move to a period where my mum could have been prevented from having cancer in the first place, and we could even cure cancers in the next decade. That is where technology is going. And right now, Britain is at the forefront of these developments, and that is why it's so exciting. We need to make sure that those developments happen here, the scientific advancements, but also we keep the intellectual property and the commercialisation of it and the benefits from it here within our own economy.
Just very finally, because I know you kind of come out swinging sometimes in stories like this, Nathan Gill, former Reform leader in Wales, jailed for 10.5 years on Friday. Reform have said that he's nothing to do with them really now, as Yousaf telling Trevor Phillips he's ancient history, he's never met him, never heard of him. It's unreasonable to besmirch everybody in Reform about what happened with Nathan Gill. I just wondered your reaction to what we've seen.
Some political parties do have outliers, and they are things which are sort of completely out of the ordinary. But with Reform, they have a Russia problem in their party. Nigel Farage has often lent into Vladimir Putin. He has used his talking points. Nigel Farage has often praised Vladimir Putin in the past. So it is clear that there is a culture within Reform which has lent them towards the kind of strongman sort of Russia of the past, but also it is the present as well, and they have this problem within their party.
He would dispute that, right?
Of course he would.
He says that that is absolutely just coming from kind of Labour smears, if you like, that he's done a lot more recently to kind of put distance between him and Putin. Well,
just look at the facts. Look at what he's said in the past. Look at the amount of times he's appeared on Russian TV networks. Look at the times he has praised Vladimir Putin. Look at the times when he's explained away the decisions of Vladimir Putin and Russia. He's
condemned him more recently, it's fair to say, right?
More recently, when the entire country has realised just how dangerous Vladimir Putin is, of course, Nigel Farage does a reverse ferret, as he often does. Nigel Farage will talk out of both sides of his mouth, but he's been consistent about one thing in the past over many, many years, and that is support and his admiration for Vladimir Putin. It is no wonder that people like the former leader of the Reform Party in Wales gravitates towards the Reform Party more than any other.
Peter Carr, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Speaking to us there on the programme.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the man who first uncovered the lies being told to Princess Diana in the BBC Panorama interview that would then rock the royal family. We'll be right back.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello, welcome back. The news this morning, the White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, if I can talk this morning, says tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. US Secretary of State has admitted there's still work to be done after meeting the Ukrainian and European negotiators. There are also reports this morning that President Zelensky might travel to the White House this week.
David Cameron has revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer and has been given the all clear. The former Prime Minister told The Times that he got the diagnosis after his wife, Samantha, urged him to make an appointment. He's now joined others in calling for a national screening programme on the NHS.
And there's mounting speculation over the contents of the Chancellor's budget, which is revealed later this week. She's facing a warning from the country's most influential business group, the Confederate of British Industry, who are urging her to change course about her plans to put British business under tax pressure and get the country's finances back on track.
Now, the BBC will be under the spotlight again this afternoon during questioning in Parliament. Comes as the fallout continues that new details emerged about what the corporation knew and when relating to a different story altogether, dating back, of course, to the 90s when Princess Diana gave her famous Panorama interview.
So Dianarama investigates reporter Martin Bashir's deception to secure the interview and its lasting impact on the British royal family is something, of course, that many of us remember and had serious repercussions for the reputation of the BBC.
Yeah, so joining us now is Andy Webb. He's the author of a new book, Dianarama. We're talking to Andy about the book and the BBC more broadly. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, good to be here.
The book is a follow-up to the original work you did, which I guess uncovered the misdeeds of Martin Bashir to secure the interview in the first place. Just remind our viewers exactly what we're talking about, what happened back in the 90s.
Wow, what happened? Well, OK, I mean, still to this day, the most momentous piece of television, that the BBC's ever made and almost certainly ever will make. Unfortunately, it is tainted, it is sordid, it is toxic. That's what that bit of television is. I mean, people may remember, the interview that Diana gave, but when you consider why she gave it, that is what makes it so toxic. Yeah.
And look, it's one. How would you describe how the BBC has reacted to your investigations and to the revelations that have come out? They had the internal investigation. There was another, I think, in 2021. Do you think they were kind of reluctant or were they open when they came to look at this?
Well, let's put it this way. The BBC has a charter duty, a legal duty, to be transparent. I mean, that's not just a fond aim. It's a legal duty. To say that they were not transparent back in 1996 and indeed in 2020, it would be a huge understatement. The critical lack of transparency was in 1996 when it is beyond doubt, beyond peradventure, that if they had briefed Princess Diana on what they knew at that time, then her life would not have very plausibly followed the course it did, which of course was a tragic course. She was dead in 18 months or so after the interview went out.
Just repeat what you're saying there. So you're saying that her life wouldn't have followed the same tragic course. So are you saying that she maybe would not have died?
Well, yeah, and it's not sort of just me saying that, because who kind of cares what a journalist thinks? In the view of her brother, Charles Spencer, who answered that question when I put it to him, very calmly and sensibly and reflectively. And he ended by saying, yeah, the consequences of the interview were lethal.
The fact that the interview led to much division, or the fact that it led to paranoia about how information came about? Just expand on that a bit.
Well, I mean, very briefly, I think paranoia is rather an unfair term to use.
Sure, I agree.
You know, but no. As a result of the interview, Princess Diana sort of shunned, forced away, did away with all the people around her whom she could trust, who provided counsel and so on. Her private secretary, Patrick Jeffson, her chauffeur, was sacked. So 18 months later, she finds herself in Paris being driven by a drunken driver and the accident happens. Yes, of course. I mean, the tragedy, the heartbreak, I think, for her family is if there is only a 30% chance, a 40% chance, a 50% chance that Diana would not have been there, then, you know, how heartbreaking is that? And what they want, and I can say to you, you know, Prince William in particular wants is transparency. He does want transparency. He wants to know things that it's taken me, you know, more than I've found out in the years that I've been spending on this. Are there any more missing smoking guns in the BBC archives? For instance, 4 of them having been weeded.
Just finally, obviously, the BBC's facing other issues today. Samir Shah, the chair, goes in front of MPs. Do you think in the last year they've tried to be transparent? I mean, we've seen 2 high-profile scalps as part of this. Is that them trying to draw a line under their current troubles?
I don't know. What I would say is this, that let's call it Dianagate. If you like, Dianagate has been a very, very effective stress test for Trumpgate. The lack of transparency, the lack of honesty, and indeed the simple lack of competence that has been shown in handling Dianagate. It didn't surprise me at all to see what's happened. And indeed, the chairman, Samir Shah, his name is in my book, and I wonder how well he is going to do.
Well, that book, Dianarama, is out now, and we thank you, Andy, so much for joining us to talk about it. Andy Webb there. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking more about the build-up to the budget with the last Chancellor before the current one. Sir Jeremy Hunt joins us next. She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
Are you getting enough? Are you getting enough?
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. I'm sure you'll all be pleased that the budget is now only 2 days away, and we're going to reflect on those final few days building up to a budget with a man who knows a lot about delivering one. It's the former Chancellor, Conservative MP, Sir Jeremy Hunt, who joins us. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Wilf.
It was funny reading a lot of the op-eds you've done in the last couple of weeks about how much gets changed in the final days, weeks leading up. As we sit here right now, will the Chancellor's budget be written? Completed?
Yes, it'll be written. She will have finished it on Friday night, will have been the last moment. In the last week, you have a chance to make what in Treasury language is called minor changes. Minor changes is anything that totals up to less than £1 billion. So actually rather a lot of money for most people to think about. But that counts as minor. And then major changes, anything over £1 billion, that has to be nailed down about 10 days before the budget.
Is it nervous these last couple of days, or is it relaxing? You've done all the hard work, but you can't deliver it yet.
Well, I always used to use the weekend before the budget to write my speech. And you can only really do that when you know exactly what's going to be in it. So in a way, it's a feeling of calm before the storm. But of course, what you are thinking about is how the budget is going to land. And what she will be doing, the Chancellor will be doing with her officials now, is thinking about every difficult question that you could ask her that will arise after the Institute for Fiscal Studies have done their analysis and published it the next day. So in some ways, budget day itself is also relatively calm because you're just reading out a speech in the House of Commons, and she does maybe 3 interviews straight afterwards. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, it's actually quite quiet. But it's the next day when you have the media onslaught and you get the settled response from the pundits, and that's what she'll be thinking about.
You said the storm, calm before the storm. How big a storm is coming? Your rough estimate, we're all trying to work out, is it going to be 10 billion of tax raises or 30 billion of tax raises? Roughly, what do you expect?
I think there'll be about 20 billion of tax rises and 5 billion of spending cuts overall. So what economists will call a consolidation of around 25 billion in total.
And in terms of how that's delivered, some are suggesting it will be the sort of piecemeal approach as opposed to pulling one of the big tax levers. Is that achievable via a piecemeal approach in a non-damaging way for the economy?
Yes, they've been using this extraordinary word, smorgasbord, which...
To be fair, Rachel Reeves hasn't been using that. It's not her word.
No, but I think it's been coming out of Treasury officials or media briefings. But she's clearly not going to do the income tax rise. So I think we will have a collection of things. I think the biggest single one will be freezing thresholds, probably £8 or £9 billion of savings. We might see some restrictions on pension benefits through salary sacrifice schemes, higher rates of council tax for more expensive homes. Those are the kind of things. And I think just about, usually the Treasury can find 1 or 2 sort of smaller things down the back of the sofa, as people always say. I think you could get that up to 20 billion.
I mean, it doesn't sound like you're that critical of that approach. Do the flip side for us. If you had made a major manifesto pledge, I am not going to put up income taxes, even if the economic circumstances change, would that be an almost impossible thing for a Chancellor to do, to breach that manifesto pledge 18 months in?
Well, I do profoundly disagree with the direction of travel, because the big central choice that Rachel Reeves has made is not to reform welfare, which if she did it properly and seriously and got the welfare bill down to where it was just before the pandemic, not doable immediately, but over the course of the Parliament, perfectly realistic, you wouldn't have to put up a single tax. And indeed, she'd have quite a bit more headroom in her numbers. So I do think the trouble with tax rises is they hold back economic growth. And the central problem she faces, the exam question, the thing we all need her to solve is to get us out of our low growth trap. So I do very much disagree with the approach. What I would say, though, is that for all chancellors, this is quite a last-minute process. You don't get your final economic forecast from the Office for Budget Responsibility until about 3 weeks before the budget. What seems to have gone wrong this time is that all those last-minute changes have played out in public, and that gives an impression of chaos and incompetence. And of course, the problem you have in the UK, specifically in the UK, is that because the whole world speaks English and the whole world looks at our media, those kind of things are heard in Singapore and Tokyo and New York and Los Angeles, and it's very damaging for the UK's reputation that this plays out in the very public way it has.
I want to touch on this process because you said, you're waiting for the OBR to make your final decisions days or weeks before you announce it, and you've reflected since leaving the job on the way in which you didn't think you were going to be able to cut national insurance contributions until all of a sudden the OBR's forecast helped you, and you did cut it. Can that be right, that we are governed in quite such a way, to such an extent, by these OBR forecasts so late in the day? Should the process be reformed?
It's a very reasonable question, but when you unpack it, it's quite difficult to think of a better way of doing it, because what happens in every budget is you need forecasts going forward, and those forecasts need to take account of what the markets are saying. And markets are changing the whole time. So, we pay over £100 billion of debt interest. And what the OBR has to do is to take recent numbers in order to have the best informed guess as to what we'll be paying over the next year. So that's why they can't give you those numbers from 6 months ago, because they could change a lot over that period. I think it is better that the economic forecasts that we use at the budget are independent. Back in the day of Gordon Brown, we used to take the Chancellor's word for it, and everyone was enormously sceptical that he would suddenly say the forecasts have magically got better in the third or the fourth year. And what we now have is an independent organisation. Of course, they're not Mystic Meg, they don't have a crystal ball, they don't know what the future is going to hold, but they are doing independently to the best of their ability. And I think, if you think about how you will think about the budget on Wednesday, the fact that those forecasts have come from an independent body and not from Rachel Reeves and the Treasury, I think will give you more confidence in them as a result.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Two final questions relating to members of your own party. Firstly, Kemi Badenoch's leadership, because I'm interested in how you step back from all this. One could look at the final year you and Rishi Sunak had in office and say, look, you managed to one way or another, get a little tax cut in for workers by cutting national insurance contribution. And then in the electoral campaign say, we think Labour will hike your taxes, something that, of course, has materialised. Do you step back and think, why aren't we as a party doing better in the polls? Why hasn't the leadership harnessed that argument more effectively when you're polling under 20%? But one of the core kind of things you set up has played out.
Well, of course, I would love us to be doing better. But I think the reality is we've been in power for 14 years. They were really turbulent years. We had the financial crisis, COVID, the pandemic, Brexit, and people wanted to change. And now, however disappointed they are with Labour, they're not going to suddenly say, come back, all is forgiven. That's not how life works. We've got to earn that trust back that we lost. And I think as people start to worry about the economy more, they're going to start to remember that for all the mistakes we may have made, the Conservative governments of that period did put the economy back on its feet when it fell into difficulties for whatever reason, and they will start to give us a hearing, but it is going to take time.
And just finally wanted to ask your reaction to the news David Cameron revealed this morning, of course, a good friend of yours, former colleague, that he's had prostate cancer, been treated for it, and so far the treatment seems to be going well. Your reflection on that, but also his calls for screening to be much more widespread, and something, of course, you know a lot about as a former health secretary.
Well, I was David's health secretary, and prime ministers are really busy people. But one thing I will say about David is he really cared about cancer policy. And I always knew that when it came to policy decisions on cancer, the Prime Minister was interested. He set up something called the Cancer Drugs Fund, which was to try and give NHS patients access to drugs that they weren't able to ordinarily get. So I think when he is brave enough to talk about what has happened to him personally, we should all take note in two ways, really. First of all, on a policy level, I mean, what he's actually said is, is a very smart thing, as you'd expect. He's saying, look, this PSA test is not perfect, but we should listen to calls to roll it out more widely and think about screening because it will have some net positive impact. But the second thing is for all of us to think about ourselves, particularly men, think about our own situations. And this was obviously totally unexpected for him. It could happen to you, it could happen to me.
Jeremy Hunt, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Really, and to be honest, someone who has done more than
about to
anyone
say,
as
I
well,
know.
like talking about the importance of checking, of screening, being on top of cancer, is Jackie. As well.
Always in the thick of it. I mean, even over the weekend, just chatting to someone else has been diagnosed, and sometimes even if you check and you find it early, it's still not early enough. Sometimes, I mean, you can never check too much.
Yeah. It makes a difference, people like David Cameron talking about it as well.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it gives a lot of men the confidence if they feel something's not right. Oh, well, if it can happen to him, he's had the best care ever. I definitely should get myself to the doctor, and I think people go, oh, it's so difficult to get a doctor's appointment, but, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and make the effort.
Yeah. You're right.
It wasn't planned that as our transition, but I'm glad we did. And as you said, Jackie is unbelievably well placed to reflect on it. But we do also want to reflect, Jackie, on the sport.
Some of us more than others.
Yeah.
For reasons that will become clear.
North London forever.
Yeah, I love that.
I really wish I could have claimed that, but it's actually the Sun headline.
I love that. It's going to become the new
London
anthem.
Forever and ever and ever. Yes, Eberici Eze, who signed in the summer and who was going to sign for Spurs. So as if the Arsenal fans didn't love him already because he snubbed Spurs, he made a phone call to Arteta and said, my boyhood club, I played for you as a youth, I want to play for you. And he ended up at Arsenal. And it was funny because Les Ferdinand, who was one of the pundits before yesterday's North London derby, said what I feel about him, and he actually signed him for QPR. He had a part in signing him for QPR, his first professional contract. He said, I feel like he's playing with the brakes on, and you feel like now, brakes very much off.
He nearly had a fourth, actually.
Yeah, he had a hat-trick yesterday, and they're rare in North London derbies. In fact, nearly 50 years since the last hat-trick. Here are the goals. I mean, we should show Trossard's goal because I don't know about you, Wilf, but I absolutely love Trossard. I just think he's a really valuable player.
I mean, he was almost man of the match himself, Trossard. He was the second best on the pitch.
He's just
played brilliantly.
Everywhere. 5 goals for the season for him. First goal, that kind of unlocked the whole thing. And then it was really one-way traffic. And I don't think when Eze started scoring his goals, there was any chance of stopping him. Definitely brakes unleashed. And you just, there was no fight there. I mean, Spurs came to defend and they were taken to pieces. And one of Thomas Frank's favourite phrases is not to take a risk is also a risk.
Yes.
And they didn't take any risks and they got super punished.
By the way, respect to Richarlison for the Spurs goal, which I think is coming up next. But
that's the longest goal this season in the league. And actually,
great goal.
Contender for goal of the season, to see him off his line and just go for it. But it was just a consolation in the end. And any other day, we'd be talking about that a lot. And we can't. We're talking about the hat-trick, which is incredible.
As we watch the other two Eze goals go in, which I just love his directness as well. Often Arsenal are criticised for just passing. He's much more direct, which I think is showing. This is all the more important because of the results over the weekend as well on Saturday.
Absolutely. So it leaves them a really nice buffer at the top of the table, 6 points clear of Chelsea, who seem to be at the moment the nearest challengers. Manchester City slipped up and didn't win their match against Newcastle, so they're 7 behind. And Liverpool, with that catastrophic defeat to Nottingham Forest at home, are 11 points behind as the reigning champions. But when asked about it, Mikel Arteta said it doesn't mean anything, because he's seen his side being reeled in before at the top of the table. So it's just like, it's not enough. It's not enough of a buffer.
And it's still like, I think we're 12 games, we're a third of the way through. It's still very, very early.
It is early, but what's different though, don't you think, as a fan, it's the way they're playing, the manner in which they're playing, and the fact that they've got so many injuries. This isn't even their first choice team, and they've managed to do that to Spurs. There's going to be big choices to be made when all those other players
It was a great afternoon.
It was a great afternoon. Bayern Munich next, though. It doesn't really get any easier.
Be even more amazing at how you find a way of coming second, Wilf.
Well, I know we probably will. This is why I'm not resting on my laurels.
What are you talking about? This is the year.
By the way, can I also just say what I thought we'd be talking about, Jackie? We've only got 10 seconds left. Was the Ashes, but it finished much quicker. We didn't get to day 4.
I thought that too. We didn't even get to day 3.
It's going to be the one bonuses of coming in so early. We could have watched it, but it was all kaput.
More excuses to do that, I'm sure.
We're out of time this hour. We'll be right back.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Good morning, it is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
The US says there's been tremendous progress on Ukraine peace talks in Geneva, but more time is needed ahead of Trump's Thursday deadline.
David Cameron reveals he's been successfully treated for prostate cancer and joins widespread calls for a national screening programme.
A tax warning from British business for Chancellor Rachel Reeves. In the week, we finally find out what's going to be in the budget.
Her predecessor, Jeremy Hunt, joined us, weighing in with his views. We'll reflect.
And he's one of the country's top political satirists, but we're going to hear why Manu Chihuahua is on a mission to get kids into theatres.
Now, it's felt like the longest run-up in history to a budget, but finally, well, come Wednesday, finally we're going to find out what are in Rachel Reeves's plans. There is still, of course, time for some last-minute lobbying, and that comes today from the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI, one of the country's most influential business groups.
So their chief executive is going to warn the government's got to change course and take some difficult decisions to avoid what they're describing as death by 1,000 taxes.
The former Chancellor, Sir Jeremy Hunt, told this programme a short time ago he predicts there will be about £20 billion worth of tax increases and £5 billion in spending cuts.
The big central choice that Rachel Reeves has made is not to reform welfare, which, if she did it properly and seriously and got the welfare bill down to where it was just before the pandemic, not doable immediately, but over the course of the Parliament, perfectly realistic, we wouldn't have to put up a single tax. And indeed, she'd have quite a bit more headroom in her numbers. So I do think the trouble with tax rises is they hold back economic growth. And the central problem she faces, the exam question, the thing we all need her to solve, is to get us out of our low-growth trap. So I do very much disagree with the approach. What I would say, though, is that for all chancellors, this is quite a last-minute process. You don't get your final economic forecast from the Office for Budget Responsibility until about 3 weeks before the budget. What seems to have gone wrong this time is that all those last-minute changes have played out in public, and that gives an impression of chaos and incompetence.
Murray, I'm interested where we feel public opinion is in terms of if it is 20 rather than 30 billion of tax hikes. Is that something that will be easier for the Chancellor to sell or not? I mean, it's certainly still a significant amount.
Yeah, it's still a massive amount, and I think the difficulty is that when you had a budget that raised taxes so much a year ago and promises of not coming back for more, it being a once-in-a-generation budget and it very much being getting everything back on track to come back, even if it is just to 20 billion, I think will still feel to many as perhaps slightly hypocritical, and that is the danger politically for Rachel Reeves. I think the other difficulty is taxes are still relatively high, historically speaking, something that Labour criticised the Tories for, but actually hasn't necessarily shifted that much under Labour either. And so is there public appetite for more tax hikes? In theory, yes, if people feel that they can really see what they're getting their money for. The problem is also people always want taxes to go up on other people.
Yeah, exactly. This is it. Tax rise is very popular as long as it's the kind of mysterious people with very broad shoulders who can bear them, who none of us know in our real lives. On that point, actually, it was quite interesting because there has been... Obviously, the government wants to kind of prioritise tax rises on the super rich, if you like, the very wealthy, who they say can afford it. But we have seen this increase in people leaving the UK as a result of it. And one person in particular over the last few days, Lakshmi Mittal, who is this kind of steel tycoon who left the UK. And I asked Peter Kyle about this directly, the business secretary, and it is worth listening to because normally, I'll be honest, what politicians, they fudge these answers much more, but he answered it in a very straight way. It's worth listening.
Whenever anyone needs to leave the UK to succeed, I think it's a worry. What I don't want to do is be, as a country, just focus just on the billionaires, because there are other people that have needed to leave. There are people starting businesses that have gone to America because they haven't had the funding that they need in this country to succeed. And that is something that we are fundamentally stopping the need for by recapitalising the markets here and putting a lot of work in for those spin-outs and those start-ups, those scale-up companies.
Do you acknowledge that some of it is because of the tax decisions of this Labour government?
I do.
You do?
Yes,
is that a problem?
I do. Now, I'm not going to duck the fact that we have put up taxes and we've closed some of the loopholes for non-DOMs.
I mean, he was quite blunt, I thought, to be honest, saying, yes, billionaires, some billionaires have left because of taxes.
I think it's interesting. I think, to me, that felt very much pointed toward your Labour member. So if you look at, Labour members, they're often very pro-wealth taxes. Labour are worried about losing voters to the Greens. Greens are talking about taxing the rich. And that rhetoric is appealing to a lot of Labour voters. And so to me, that sounded like Labour also saying, hold on, we're not just, the kind of centrist party that doesn't really want to rock the boat with the rich. Actually, we can perhaps go halfway to some of that rhetoric that, you're hearing from Zach Polanski and the Greens. And actually, we're not ashamed to say, yes, we've lost some billionaires, but we've kept loads of doctors. That was his caveat, wasn't it? We've kept all these doctors, look at all the good doctors we've done, and that's going to help the NHS. And so, to me, that was a framing of an issue that many people would say is an issue, a problem for Labour, but he was trying to frame it as, actually, we've got all these great things for the NHS, and actually, is it the worst thing in the world to lose all these billionaires? Maybe not.
I think there was so striking a revelation, Sophie, that I actually wonder whether there's a tiny bit of pitch rolling in there.
Yeah.
And whether in the budget there is a plan to slightly step back from the scale of changes they put on the non-dom tax status. There's been quite a lot of talk about this, whereas in particular on a foreigner's or dual national's foreign assets, if they die, like Lakshmi Mittal's worth tens of billions, but it's his Indian steel company. Yeah. If he died whilst in the UK, should that fall under British inheritance tax? Will they step back from that part, which has been talked about? So I just wonder, such a striking revelation.
You said it was a worry as well, which was quite a strong word.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Maybe it's to offset those people that do like the change and think, good riddance to all these people if there's something to come. The only other thing I thought was really interesting as well in what he said there is he said, yes, some people have left, but that's why we're also trying to recapitalise the markets. And again, there's talk as to whether there's going to be some reforms to come to try and get the City of London firing again. We haven't had those yet. So he slightly misframed the timing, I think, by the sort of damage is done, but as the benefit of the other things they're doing fully come through. Maybe that's, again, pointing to some changes that are to come, which I think the City of London would welcome if they materialise.
Really interesting.
It's also fascinating, we've seen in the Times, haven't we, talking about taxing more expensive properties, and that, again, pitch rolling for the idea of appealing to those who are worried about inequality and rising inequality, and something that Labour feel kind of morally obliged to do something about. So finding a balance. The non-dom stuff is very, very interesting because, again, if they do start to do a kind of half U-turn, we already saw a half U-turn on the non-dom status already over a year ago. If we see another slight U-turn on the non-dom status, again, that's difficult for Labour when they were so vocal about the non-dom status under the Tories.
Zach Polanski's going to be all over it. Mari, thank you very much indeed. Mario speaking to us there.
Now, the White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, says tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. The talks were, of course, focusing on President Trump's 28-point plan, which has been panned. I didn't know if it was meant to say
it was a typo, didn't
planned
you?
or penned, because we've been talking about who wrote it.
Panned.
But it was panned. It was correctly written. I just couldn't read it. It has been panned by Ukraine and Europe.
We are also waiting to hear whether President Trump will meet European leaders, including Keir Starmer, in Washington. But there are reports this morning that President Zelensky might actually travel to the White House this week. Here was Marco Rubio last night.
I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon. Whether it's Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Monday of the following week, we want it to be soon because people are going to, between today and the time we deal with this, more people are going to die. More destruction is going to happen. Our goal is to end this war as soon as possible, but we need a little more time.
Well, Ivor Bennett is in Moscow for us. Ivor, just talk us through what is actually going on. It's one of these things where every day it feels like there's a different spin on it, a different twist or turn. What's the reality of where these peace talks, or peace deal, if you can even call it that, is at?
Well, it's hard to tell, Sophie, isn't it? It's very hard to tell, given all the discussions and negotiations that are going on in different places. But the spin from the US, as you just heard there, was very positive indeed after these talks in Geneva between the Americans and the Ukrainians and the Europeans. Marco Rubio the US top diplomat used words like tremendous, optimistic and productive to describe the talks. And then in this joint statement issued with Ukraine afterwards, they said that they had come up with a refined peace framework, which Washington then independently said Ukraine was happy with. But we haven't heard Ukraine talk about how they feel about it, actually. And I think that's quite telling. We haven't heard independently from them. So I think we should be cautious about how happy they actually are. We also don't know for sure what is in this alternative proposal that's supposedly been put forward, but reports of its detail, of its contents are circulating. Supposedly it includes strengthened security guarantees from the US for Ukraine, also supposedly no ban on Kyiv joining NATO, and also on territory, it reportedly proposes just negotiations on territory rather than a swap, and instead a freezing of the conflict along the current contact lines. Now, if that's the case, that would be very different to the 28-point plan that's currently on the table, which the US drew up with Moscow after holding secret talks with them. That proposes things like handing over all of the Donbass, including territory that Russia doesn't yet occupy, and so to Ukraine, that is more of a surrender document, more of a capitulation, and so for them it's really a non-starter. In terms of where we go from here, well, there's going to be more talks. Initially, the US and Donald Trump wanted Ukraine to agree to something by Thursday. That was the pressure from them. There is still some impetus for that, but the deadline has softened somewhat. But the Ukrainians and the Americans are still going to talk in Geneva. I think the crunch meeting, though, is going to be later in the week when Volodymyr Zelensky is supposedly, there are reports that he's going to be heading to Washington, perhaps European leaders too, including Keir Starmer. So it's going to be, I think, all eyes later in the week on the White House, potentially another showdown between Zelensky and Donald Trump.
Ivor, thank you very much indeed.
We've got some breaking news. Sky News can reveal that growth is going to be downgraded every year for the rest of the Parliament. The OBR, of course, on Wednesday will also, as well as the budget, give us their latest economic forecasts. And they're going to suggest that UK economic growth will be lower than last forecast in March every year until 2029.
And obviously with a government that has absolutely pitched itself as being all about growth, being pro-growth, this is difficult news, and growth forecasts, of course, have a massive knock-on effect on everything from taxes to how much money the government's got to spend. It's all according to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, on his podcast, Politics at Sam and Anne's.
We're going to be joined by Sam later on in the programme, so we'll get his full breakdown on that. And, of course, it's funny, it comes... of course, as we just asked Jeremy Hunt about the OBR and the process, and saying, you know, the difference is it is at least independent, so the government can't kind of shy away from it.
This is the Office of Budget Responsibility. We should say it was kind of set up under the kind of Cameron years, wasn't it? But then it basically gives these kind of economic forecasts that some people think are, as Wilfred was just saying, a very, very important way of checking what the government's up to. Others would say it's a straitjacket and they get everything wrong anyway.
We will discuss more with Sam Coates next hour on that big scoop from him. By the way, you can listen to him flesh it out in the meantime if you want to. If you scan that QR code, Politics at Sam and Anne's, well worth listening if you haven't done already. Now, David Cameron has revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer and has now been given the all clear.
The former Prime Minister told The Times he got the diagnosis because his wife, Samantha, urged him to make an appointment.
Well, more than 63,000 men are diagnosed with the disease every year. More than 12,000 men die. It's worth noting that 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed at some point in their lifetime.
Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Oliver. He's here with us to talk about this. It can have such a big impact, can't it, when public figures, people that we know who are very familiar to us, come out and say, this has happened, particularly if you're only 59.
Yeah, it definitely can. Good morning. You think about the likes of Jake Goody, who we talked about last hour. You think about the King, the royals who have come out and talked about this. You always see the relevant cancer charities to the cancer that those people are having treatment for. They see an uplift in the number of people who visit their websites, who get in touch. This morning, we've actually got in touch with Cancer Research UK to see whether they've seen that, and they're just trying to get that data together now to see whether there has been that spike. But it can have an absolutely huge impact, as you say.
And in terms of how he's framed this, he's talked about it very openly about his advice going forward for policy. but also how he discovered and the process he went through.
Yeah, so he found out after going to a GP to get the tests that were recommended to do, but he was advised to do that by his wife after she heard an interview on the radio with the founder of the private members club, Soho House. And so she said, go to the doctors and get this same test. And in this really personal interview with The Times, Lord Cameron says, let's be honest, men are not very good at talking about their health. We tend to put things off. We're embarrassed to talk about something like the prostate because it's intricately connected with sexual health and everything else. I sort of thought, well, this has happened to you and you should lend your voice to it. And then he goes on to say, I know it's not a slam dunk. There are respectable arguments against a screening programme, but it seems to me that quite a lot of things have changed over the last few years.
Do you think that we are moving towards a place where we're going to see a screening programme like David Cameron wants to see?
Potentially. Look, there are those in the medical community who say that the numbers don't stack up. It's still not correct in terms of the cost. There are others that say, like Lord Cameron, like the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Olympic cyclist Sir Chris Hoy, this is something that's got to happen.
Oliver, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And should mention, by the way, Sophie, as well, that as Oliver was mentioning, he went to get tested, David Cameron, because his wife heard an interview on the radio with Nick Jones, the founder of the Soho House Group. And Nick Jones is going to join us next hour to talk about all of this. And he's been a very loud campaigner for himself, having gone through something similar in recent years with his own prostate cancer experience. So that's coming up next hour.
We also want to tease something else that we've got too.
I have a feeling I know which clip you're going to dig up.
You'll understand in a minute. Munya Chihuahua, who is a brilliant political satirist, he's also someone who believes very, very strongly in the power of theatre, the creative arts. He's founded a charity where he is taking young black boys to the theatre to try and broaden their kind of cultural experiences. We interviewed him and we got him to do an impression of Wilf.
You said something about old media. It's just funny. You know, I've been trying to build a TikTok following. It's just not working. Have we, as a society, gone mad?
That was actually quite good. What do you think?
That's terrible.
Yeah.
So we're going to play that interview, despite how much I get mocked in it, next hour. Or is it next hour or later this hour? Someone tell me very quickly. But anyway, we're going to play it later in the programme. And well worth staying tuned for it, because Munya has a really important campaign as well.
Yeah, he does.
And he's just very, very engaging and charismatic. And we talk about a lot with Munya Chihuahua. That's coming up later in the programme.
Now, the boss of the Asian-inspired chain Itsu is venting his frustrations, I think it's fair to say, with the UK's fast food industry.
Julian Metcalf says providers and government policies aren't doing enough to combat rising obesity rates.
Well, I'm pleased to say that Julian joins us now, alongside the chef and TV presenter Monica Galetti. Great to have you here, yourself as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're here basically to talk about a new, kind of like a posh pot noodle. Is that fair to say? It's probably not how you choose to describe it.
No, it's what we've worked together to create a kind of revolutionary impossible product which costs £1.50 and is beautifully healthy, made in Japan with miso and rice noodles. And it's probably the most brilliant product we've ever made. But we did it together because it needed a real genius chef.
I was about to say, who claims more of the credit of this, Julian? Do you...
Well, to serve beautiful food for £1.50 to the people of this country, which is now available in all the supermarkets, is almost impossible. Mm-hmm. But it needed a genius like Monica and an incredible group of people in Japan, and we've done it.
And Monica, talk us through what this... I mean, we all know the classic pot noodle. You just simply have to pour boiling water in and job done. Probably the classic ones, not commenting on this, weren't as healthy. So what's the new one?
It is very much that. The only thing is we've taken it right back, and the base of this is a great product from Japan, which we created with the team there that make the miso, and it's a healthy alternative. There's no E numbers in it, but also the noodles that are used, they're made from Vietnam, they're rolled by hand, and it's about creating something that isn't just healthy, but delicious. You want to eat it. It's important.
Snapshot, Monica, your take on this country's kind of state of play with healthy food being available at reasonable prices.
It's a challenge. I think it
You can say
is.
what you really think. You can go on.
Oh yeah. I mean, Julian, is someone that will lead on that campaign. But it is a challenge, and food, fast food. It's just a quick alternative for people. It is there. But I think you're able to create something that is better for you and you can afford it. That is the issue. Normally something that's better for you comes at a cost. Yeah. And I think you've bitten the bullet for this, Julian, and really put his heart and soul in offering that.
Yeah, it is possible. It's very, very hard work. The average spend in ITSU is still under £10. So it is possible, but the product we've created is truly extraordinary. I mean, at £1.50, that's how much it costs. This really, truly beautiful thing.
If we're interested, and I really get this as well. Like it's a battle for all of us to eat healthily, but I think particularly for like parents with kids, you're worried about the temptation.
Absolutely true.
It's exhausting, like you say.
It's exhausting
and expensive.
Yeah.
Like, who's to blame for this?
I don't think anyone's to blame. It's a combination of so many, many things. What matters is what is the solution, and this definitely is the most exciting product range I've ever seen. It's come from 1,000 years of Japanese culture. I mean, miso is a fermented. It's soybeans which are then fermented with koji, and they're famously healthy, miso. And they, over the last 5 years, we've developed, and particularly in the last year with Monica, a way of adding flavour. So there are 5 varieties in 2 sizes, and they cost £1.50. It's like a miracle product.
Is there another solution that we need to be looking at a bit more big picture as well? Whether it is, sugar taxes, whether it is more regulation.
I think so. I think regulation is no bad thing.
Yeah.
But I think education. So ITSU has a big charity where we go into schools. Education is very important. I genuinely think a lot of people don't realise the horrible things in the food they're eating.
What kind of regulation do you think?
Well, having some high taxes on sugar taxes, it's not such a bad thing, because the manufacturers do change their recipes, I can assure you.
Monica, what's your view on weight loss drugs and the amount that they're being... No, I mean, I think as someone that wants people to come into the restaurants, order what they want to eat, not for every meal. Is it something that you think is being taken up too readily or not?
The weight loss jab, I mean, I know of people who have used it for health reasons and people who've used it for the fact that they want to slim in a very quick way, and I think, like anything, there should be a precaution of understanding what that's going to do to you, as opposed to taking the long road and creating a regime or a way of living and eating and exercising when there's a jab that will do it for you. I don't know how quick it works. I find things like that frightening. I really do. I mean, they do look great, yes, they do, but, I hear stories that, maybe in a few months or a few years that it does have issues that you're unaware of.
Yeah. I'm really interested to get your view ahead of the budget as well, if I may, because look, we all know the hit that the hospitality industry has taken. I think that's fair to say. I'm sure both of you got an opinion on it. What's your kind of message to the Chancellor ahead of Wednesday?
No, listen, there's so much doom and gloom, and there's no doubt the industry's been terribly badly affected by these 3, the headwinds and the taxes, etc., etc. I think it's sad because people should be able to go out. I think going out to eat and drink should be affordable, and it's becoming not affordable. But in case of ITSU, we just have to work 10 times harder to keep our prices below £10 and to create the sort of food that Monica and I have now done with Noodle Pot. But it's a shame. I mean, hospitality it's a wonderful thing.
Do you think that we'll see a move to more businesses employing, self-service, for example, counters?
Yeah, no bad thing.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So all the modern technology, which some people don't like, helps, I suppose. Making fresh food with fresh ingredients is labour-intensive. It's quite, it's hard work. It takes time. But there are a great many things, of course, the government could do, should have done, and haven't yet. But hopefully they will. I rather doubt they will.
Monica, I think a lot of people sometimes think high-end restaurants, many of the great restaurants you're involved with, have it easy. But it's a very labour-intensive business. Has it been much harder, whether we think about the national insurance contribution hike last year or other factors? Has it been much harder to keep the show on the road?
Very, very much so. I know a lot of colleagues, who are facing that, especially, smaller independent businesses that struggle with that. You know, whether it's, you know, the cost of labour nowadays, ingredients, you know, are so expensive. So when you're in the higher end, where everything is down to the quality of the ingredients, and then they're just, everything is just above. And you only have to pass that on to your customers, and we have issues. You know, and there is so much support that is needed for the hospitality industry. Hospitality gives so much to the economy as a whole. So I like to think the Chancellor, you know, has really, you know, taken a look at that and then provide some support for them.
Julian, I just wanted to ask, Sophie was talking to Peter Carl earlier about the extent of, it was actually, you know, one of the richest men in Britain in terms of flagship Metal leaving the country and the non-dom status affecting that. More broadly, you're obviously a very successful man and a wealthy man. When you see changes in taxes, does it lead you ever to think, I want to leave, or is that just the bar for that would be so unbelievably high?
I haven't considered it. It's just not on the cards. I hope in the end common sense prevails and this country gets back on its feet and we sort out this, and it's more of a temporary blip than a real long-term horror, which we kind of saw in the 1970s. Do you remember, before you were around?
Before we were born.
I was
We've read about it.
So
We've read about it.
No, let's hope they're sensible. But in the meantime, what matters is, I think Monica and I can prove you can do remarkable things to sell healthy food. And it's proved that. You can. There is hope. It's not all doom and gloom. There is pride and joy alongside. There has to be. Yeah. And I focus on that. It's the only way, you know, to wake up in the morning and be thrilled with what you can do.
Just to explain to people like me who I don't always understand, but you say that you hope common sense would prevail.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, it's obvious to a great many of your viewers that we're probably going down the wrong route.
What is the wrong route?
Well, just endless bureaucracy and taxes, and it just, in the end, doesn't really work. You've got to. Yeah, listen, it's a very complicated subject. What we do is focus on food, affordability, and wonderful nutrition. Yeah, and it can be done. But there have certainly been a lot of headwinds, which is why so many hospitality businesses have closed down, and that is tragic.
Julian, Monica, a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been really interesting to hear from
you.
both of you. Thank you.
You might undercut yourselves with that new product. It sounds enticing. It's
bloody good. I'll send you some.
Scratch that word there. But otherwise, all accepted. Right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be talking more about the BBC's current travails ahead of the chair going in front of Parliament today. Lewis Goodall joins us next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, To find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back to Ridge and Frost. Let's get you up to speed with the top stories. The White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, says tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. The US Secretary of State has admitted there's still work to be done after meeting Ukrainian and European negotiators. There are reports this morning that President Zelensky might travel to the White House later this week.
David Cameron has revealed he's been treated for prostate cancer and has been given the all clear. The former Prime Minister told The Times that he got the diagnosis because his wife, Samantha, heard someone on the radio and told him to make an appointment. So he's now calling for a national screening programme on the NHS.
There's mounting speculation over the contents of the Chancellor's budget, which will be revealed on Wednesday. She's facing a warning from the country's most influential business group, the CBI, who are urging her to change course over her plans to avoid putting British businesses under more tax pressure and to get the country's finances back on track.
Now, the BBC will be in the spotlight again today as its leaders face questions from MPs over the handling of the misleading edit of a Donald Trump speech in a Panorama documentary. Now, there are reports this morning the BBC will overhaul the way it investigates editorial concerns and create a new role of Deputy Director General. Well, we're joined by someone who might be familiar to you, the newsagent's co-host, former policy editor of the BBC's Newsnight, Lewis Goodall. I should also say that we actually used to work together as well, full disclosure.
I was going to say, Sophie, more importantly, former political correspondent of Sky News.
Of this parish.
Indeed so. That's what people still say to me. Rightly so.
Yeah, too right.
Yeah,
I like that.
Absolutely.
So what's your take? You worked at the BBC, right? You worked at Newsnight. You're not someone who shies away from giving an opinion. Is the BBC biased?
I don't think it is biased in a way that it is being alleged to be biased, i.e. the whole point of the Prescott dossier was to say that the BBC is institutionally biased in different directions to which he points, sort of against Trump and on a suite of other measures. Now, of course, you will always be able, in an organisation like the BBC, an organisation like Sky, an organisation that, Sophie, any sort of big journalistic organisation, the sorts that we've worked for, you're always going to be able to point to individual items, individual programmes, individual things that are said and said, could that have been better? That is a different question to the idea of institutional bias. And I have to say that on the dossier that this gentleman, Michael Prescott, who's going to be at the Select Committee later today, in terms of the issues that he points to, even within the things that he has said, there isn't that much evidence to suggest that there is systemic bias on those questions, although it is true to say that on any individual matter or individual subjects, there will, of course, be mistakes, and sometimes you just don't meet the standards that you would like to meet in any given day, on any given day, in any given event.
In a lot of the Prescott report, the conclusion was that there was a liberal bias in the BBC. And I ask this, in the kind of most respectful way, do you think that the reason you don't think the BBC is biased is because you share the liberal bias of the BBC?
No, because you and I both know, Sophie, that when you do jobs like this and you go into broadcast jobs, just as in there are a whole suite of different jobs in professions all over the country, none of us are impartial. You're not impartial, I'm not impartial. We're not impartial people. There is no such thing as that, particularly if you're interested, like you and I am, in political journalism. It would be very, very odd if you had no views or no politics. I don't, you don't. We both have those things. But you can also do something, which is when you go and do jobs like this, you put a hat on, you say, yes, I've got those views, but I am going to be in a position where I am going to look at any particular subjects with impartiality and with accuracy and as a journalist. Now, my question is this. Many of those same people, some of whom we're going to hear from, at the Select Committee later on today, they too have politics. They too have partiality. And my point, and I know that this is the case for many people in the BBC as well, is that they do not themselves ask themselves the sorts of searching questions about their own biases and their own prejudices that they are all too willing to ask of other people.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Well, I mean, in a sense that, look at the Prescott dossier itself. It has a whole suite of complaints about the BBC's coverage of Gaza, about the BBC's coverage of Trump, and a whole array of other things. I would have a lot more time for that dossier and some of the people on the board who are prosecuting these questions and allegations of bias if that dossier included the suite of other accusations about bias on other things in other direction. I note, for example, that there is nothing in that dossier about the accusations of over-representation of Reform or under-representation of the Green Party or over-attachment to economic coverage of economics, which is attached to old economic orthodoxies and old ideas or ideas around immigration and so on. So if that dossier had come along and said, look, I have looked across the whole suite of complaints from left to right, from liberal to conservative, I would think fair enough. But it just so happens, curiously enough, to contain the bugbears and obsessions and culture war interests of the people on the board, and perhaps Prescott himself, and their interests, their biases, their prejudices, their concerns. And you can't approach impartiality like that. If you look at impartiality, you've got to look across the suite and across the table.
Do you think the board's fit for purpose?
Not in the way that it's currently constituted, no, I don't. And I don't think you should be having political appointments to the BBC. And I don't think, I mean, look, clearly, Sophie, there is a crisis of governance at the BBC at the moment. We saw a resignation just on Friday of a lesser-known member of the board because it seems he himself was citing sort of governance concerns. One of the reasons that this crisis exploded, right, is because that board could not agree a common position and response to the Panorama edit. Now, we can have a big discussion about how grave or serious the Panorama edit was and so on, but it's clear that a board which was functioning correctly and functioning properly should be able to come to a common position. And the fact that they were not able to do so, and that vacuum that then exists was filled by all of the politics and the White House getting involved and so on, which made this crisis 10 times worse for the BBC than it needed to be. So one of the things clearly that Samir Shah, the chairman, is going to have to answer later on today is exactly what's going on with the board, and as you say, whether it needs to be reconstituted in some way. Although, to be fair to the BBC, I mean, God, it's reconstituted every sort of few years, right? I mean, it used to be BBC Board of Governors, then the BBC Trust, now the board.
You mentioned Samir Shah there. Is he in trouble, the chairman?
I think he's in trouble for that reason, which is that he has been unable... Look, one of the jobs of the chair, right, of any organisation is to try and reach some consensus and to ensure that if there isn't consensus, that does not lead to torpor, that it does not lead to reputational problems for the BBC. He's been unable to do that. Now, I think there are some reasons for that, but he's clearly going to have to account for this extraordinary series of events which have taken place over the last month.
So this is your big job pitch, then, for the BBC, I guess?
I think you're going to get the call before I will, Sophie, to be perfectly honest. I'm more likely to end up sitting next to Wilfred, I think, than...
You'd be most welcome. I love that. DG,
fabulous.
The runners and riders for the DG is probably more of a Westminster journalism insider bubble.
No, go on, I'll ask, what do you reckon, then?
What?
Who should it be?
What? If not Sophie?
Yeah, not here. The director general.
I know you've just got going and you can't lose your star tone.
I don't want it to be
lost.
I know
you'd be lost.
She's got to stay here.
Well, look, you know, the weird thing is, right, is that this used to be a job, DG, as we know, right? It would be so coveted. You know, you'd have a list that's as sort of long as your arm of people who would be, you know, chasing to get this job. What's weird, and it just shows how basically almost ungovernable the BBC's become and how difficult these jobs are, is that actually all of the people who you might think are rushing to rule themselves out rather than get in. So, you know, you've got to hope. That's what I'm saying, Sophie.
Yeah.
Are you going to rule it out now?
I can rule it out, yeah.
Damn, see, that's
Sorry.
What I mean. That's what I mean. Well,
Yeah.
Another one bites the dust.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks.
Now up next, comedian Munya Chihuahua, best known for his political satire videos on TikTok, has launched a new initiative aiming to introduce young black boys to the theatre. The Black Boys Theatre Club is working in collaboration with several schools across London to provide theatre trips for 15 and 16-year-olds.
Well, we caught up with Munya a short while ago and spoke about his initiative to get specifically black boys into theatre and what he thinks about the UK's political future too. And he made a good impression, right, Will?
Yeah, much better even than I can do it myself.
There's something about being in a theatre, and I guess that is what you're trying to bring to the Black Boys Theatre Club. Talk to us about it.
I mean, just look at this place. It feels so, like, regal and, you know, opulent. And there's just a certain magic, you know, when you sit in the stillness. And for me, the first time I went to the theatre was to see The Lion King when I was 16. When I returned to the theatre, a bit older, because, you know, that experience really stuck with me, and I thought, when I have the money to do it, I'm going to go back. You know, it was so different. You know, I remember walking into a production by myself. I can't remember what it was of. I think it was at the Old Vic. And this time around, I was looking for my seat, and I felt this sort of, this sea of eyes on me, sort of, suddenly felt very alien. And it was like a sort of, this middle-class gaze almost. And then I felt really unwelcome. So I knew there's magic in the theatre, but I didn't feel allowed to enjoy it. And so that's why we created Black Boys Theatre Club. So over the last year, we've been running trips to take boys to go and watch their first play. We've seen everything from Oscar Wilde plays to Stranger Things to musicals. And 120 students we've done, and now we've officially launched.
What's the feedback been like from the boys? You've been doing this for about a year.
Yeah.
And I can see the smile on your face. It's really been such a rewarding experience.
What I love so much about it is you see their ears prick up for certain lines, always different lines. Could be a bit of staging, could be a spotlight falling on a certain actor. You see different moments of electricity in different students. And I'm not under any sort of delusion that you're going to take these boys to watch these shows and they're going to waltz out the next Idris Elba, you know, and light up Broadway. It's more so just planting some sort of creative seed.
Can we talk a bit about politics as well?
I would love to.
I love your sketches and things. And what I think is so brilliant is when you can throw some comedy in, just kind of hold the mirror up a little bit to people.
When I'm making political humour, I'm trying to mirror back a feeling that we all have, so that if there is discontent there, we will go and vote, or we will sign the petition, or email our MPs. I'm never really trying to bring people to my side of politics because, you know, I'm still trying to work that out myself. But I do want just to have a collective consciousness that we all have a responsibility to make the change we want to see.
Can you do a bit of Keir Starmer for us? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, OK. Can I say something?
Do you take requests?
I already
I don't
know that this is another impression of another character. But when I do a Keir Starmer, it tends to be like this. It's very nasal. It smells like he's just snorted a Pirates. And did you know his father's a toolmaker? My father's a toolmaker. Keir Starmer, PM in your girls' DMs, trying to make Westminster less sinister.
That's amazing. Who would you take out of us two?
What do you mean?
What, if you're going to do an impression of one of us, who'd you choose? Who'd you go for?
I think I'd do Wilf.
Did you guys
you said something.
I promise.
You said something about old media. It's just funny. You know, I've been trying to build a TikTok following. It's just not working. Have we, as a society, gone mad?
That was actually quite good. What do you think?
That's terrible.
Yeah, we've got a new co-anchor on the show.
Next interview we're booking is the best female impressionist, and I'm going to plan that out in advance.
I love it. I love it. You say that you're not trying to impose your political view, that it's more about just trying to make people more engaged in politics, I guess.
Sure.
How do you feel about kind of politics at the minute? Because it feels to me like people are more engaged than ever in politics, right? You know, there's a lot of naysayers saying that, you know, people are switching off, et cetera, et cetera. But it feels to me that because of this kind of digital transformation, there is a hugely engaged, politically switched on audience.
Correct. My feeling on politics at the moment is we've sort of forsaken principles of right and wrong in replacement of left and right, or positions on the political spectrum, right? Robust measures where we would usually come together and go, that behaviour's not OK, is now being sort of framed as, oh, that's just your political opinion. You're saying that because you disagree with me politically. And it's so funny, like, just being with the boys and thinking about when you're young. If your kid's teacher phoned you up and said, your child's been stealing, they've been lying, they've been inciting violence in the classroom, you know, they've been forging results in their homework. As a parent, we would tell them that's the wrong thing. But for some reason, we've become more tolerant of it in our politicians. It makes no sense.
It's been honestly great to talk. Thank you so much for giving your time.
I thought he was such a really fun guy to spend time with.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And by the way, also, we put him on the spot to do an impression, which is
Yeah.
very hard to do. He was very game, and what a great campaign as well. he was
Yeah,
leading.
you took it quite well as well, to be fair.
Well, you know, that's part and parcel of the gig. By the way, you just be careful who we might book in future. You know, I'll get my own back one way or another.
We'll see. So the Paralympics leadership and the UK government are at odds over reinstating Russia in the Games.
The UK was one of 34 countries to sign a joint statement expressing serious concern over the International Paralympic Committee lifting the partial suspensions of Russia and its ally Belarus.
So the decision hasn't been explained until now, but the President, Andrew Parsons, has told Sky News it's not linked to participation in wars. Rob Harris explains.
As Ukraine faces pressure to accept a peace deal, Russia is already starting to be brought in from the cold by sport. The Paralympics lifting bans on Russia and war ally Belarus despite the conflict continuing. Because it's now being claimed the invasion itself was never the reason for the ban. As for the first time since the countries were reinstated, the president of the International Paralympic Committee explains the decision to Sky News.
Russia and Belarus, they use Paralympic sport to promote their participation in the war, in the conflict. And this is what led to the first suspension, the suspension in 23. Between 23 and now, in the discussion went around, obviously there is less evidence of that being used again for the promotion of the war. So this was important to clarify to our own membership, but also it has to do with the statement that was put out.
That's the statement criticising the Paralympic decision from a coalition of governments. They said, "We view this development with serious concern, given that the Russian aggression against Ukraine continues and the Russian and Belarusian breaches of the Olympic Charter remain." But this is what the IPC is now disputing, claiming their decision has been misunderstood by ministers. And as a global movement, it's facing questions within about inconsistencies banning some countries and not others at war.
The reason why we take action and propose the membership to suspend nations or not is not linked to participation in wars. The majority of the membership, they were expressing these views. Why only Russia and Belarus? And why not punish others if the case is only the war, which again, it's not, is breach of the constitution.
But for the International Olympic Committee, bans on Russia and Belarus remain. Just this week, the United Nations adopted the Olympic truce for next year's Winter Games in Italy, a platform used by Ukraine to speak out.
The international community must maintain the suspension of Russian and Belarusian athletes from international sports competitions. Allowing their participation would undermine the integrity of sport as a contributor to peace, condone the ongoing killing of Ukrainian athletes and their coaches, and show disrespect to the hundreds of members of Ukraine's sports community who have been killed, injured, or displaced by this war.
Russia won't have a team at the Milan Cortina Winter Paralympics, largely because individual sports maintain their own bans. But it seems increasingly likely the Los Angeles 2028 Games will mark the end of Russia's exile after more than a decade of punishments for doping and war by the Olympics and Paralympics. Rob Harris, Sky News.
We are going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to be sticking on the topic of sport, but a slightly different angle, and catch up on the key takeaways from the weekend's action.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget. I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
This knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Jackie's back, and both Jackie and I are pretty happy this morning.
We are, although we cannot stop talking about the cricket, even though it
the
finished
cricket as well.
Yeah, last Christmas.
We'll come to the cricket. We'll come to the cricket.
Yeah. Just to explain, they're both Arsenal fans, by the way. This is why they're both delighted. If you're wondering what on earth is going on this morning, that is it.
North London forever.
I love that.
Or ever. They both work. I mean, you could just take either one of them. 4-1 to Arsenal against Spurs yesterday. The most one-sided North London derby that you could ever see. And, you know, for Ebba Eze, who they signed in the summer for $67.5 million, he kind of just sort of came of age, I think, yesterday. You know, Les Ferdinand, who signed him when he signed for QPR. His very first professional contract was with QPR. And Les Ferdinand was a pundit yesterday and said, he's been playing with the brakes on for Arsenal, and then I think yesterday the brakes very much came off with that hat-trick, which was so joyful. You know, he was thanking God, all his family were there, he's a lifelong Arsenal fan, and I think it was just absolute dream come true territory. And the fact that he turned down Spurs in the summer when the deal was almost done, I think the Arsenal fans just could not love him anymore today.
I've got an Eze story that I've told Wilf already. So it was the weekend before he signed for Arsenal, so he wasn't playing any football. And I saw him in a cafe, and he was in a cafe, like a really normal cafe, not a posh place at all, with all his family. They're all in there, just having lunch. Seemed a really normal guy. So it made me like him, actually.
What, the week before he signed?
Yeah, it was that week where he might have just signed, but basically he obviously had a weekend off. It was like a Saturday.
Guys, so shall I turn down Spurs and phone?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yes, I think you should. OK, then.
Yeah, I remember I saw my friend who's a Spurs fan afterwards, and he was like, no, cursing him.
It was, but he is such a likeable character on every level. Yeah. I mean, even before he became an Arsenal player, I'm not just saying that. At Palace, he was so likeable. And he was an Arsenal youngster and didn't get a professional contract. Yeah. So he's gone through this journey.
He's been a youngster, actually, at loads of different clubs. So he was an original Arsenal youngster, 8-year-old, up to, 13 or something. He was then also at Millwall. There was another club he was at as a kid as well. And then ended up signing pro forms at QPR, then being loaned out, then going to Palace. And then he's really learnt his trade, I feel. Yeah. And the fact that, he just wanted to kind of thank the team for his performance yesterday when your microphone was, you would be so excited.
He's really humble, no?
They don't come around very often, hat-tricks in the North London derby. I mean, nearly 50 years ago.
So is this it then? Is this the weekend that Arsenal won the league?
No.
Long way to go.
No, it's so long. And even Arteta
We've been here before.
Yeah, it's true.
They have been reeled in before in the new year.
That's true.
Arteta said 6 points, it's not really enough. It doesn't really make much of a difference. But it just feels different this time because of the way they're playing and the fact that team, there's so many injuries. That's not even their first choice team. And yet Spurs went out to frustrate and to defend and, not take a risk. And they've just took them to pieces. And that was kind of the most enjoyable thing as an Arsenal fan, you know, watching that match. 6 clear of Chelsea, 7 clear of Man City, who dropped points, which was kind of crucial this weekend, I think, as well. And then, you know, 11 points clear of Liverpool, who are the defending champions and having a really, really tough time of it. So of all those teams, Arsenal are the team that's kind of, you know, playing their socks off.
Playing Chelsea, by the way, next weekend, so we'll kind of test this.
And Bayern Munich in the week as well.
And Bayern Munich in the week. Luke Littler, over the weekend?
Yes, last night he won the Players' Championship, so he just keeps notching up these big trophies that he's never won before because, you know, he's a kid. And he just won another one last night, and I actually watched his semi-final, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. And I mentioned Luke Littler earlier because when the show finishes, I'm going to interview him for the show, sort of looking ahead to the world champs. Now, he is the world champion. He is the world number one. He's the youngest ever world number one. He won the Players' Championship last night, and it just looked, you know, like a stroll. And I just think he's a really interesting character because he's one of those sports people who their best darting comes out when he's under the most pressure. And not many people can do that. A lot of people sort of crumble a little bit when the going gets really tough.
And he's
he
18.
just sort of goes for it. Yeah, it's going to be 19 in the new year.
That is mind-blowing. That's so mind-blowing.
Going for a second world title and just notching up all these big world titles and winning money, life-changing money for him and his family. I think it's a great story.
It is. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story.
Jackie, great stuff as always. Thanks so much. We'll be reflecting a bit more on the sport next as well. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be back with all of the day's top stories, including ongoing build-up to the budget.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Good morning and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
It is 9 a.m. We're at Sophy and Wilf. Good morning from flagship. Let's get to it.
The tax warning from British business for Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the week that we'll finally find out what's going to be in her budget.
David Cameron reveals he's been successfully treated for prostate cancer and joins widespread calls for a national screening programme.
The US says there's been tremendous progress on Ukraine peace talks in Geneva, but more time is needed ahead of Trump's Thursday deadline.
We'll speak to the entrepreneur Nick Jones, the man who prompted David Cameron's checkup that ultimately led to his cancer diagnosis.
And we look at what's behind the growing push from some fitness professionals to ditch the health trackers.
Hello, good morning. Now, it felt like the longest run-up to a budget in history, but we're finally going to find out what's happening when Rachel Reeves unveils her plans on Wednesday. There is, of course, time for a last-minute bit of lobbying before that, and today it's from the Confederation of British Industry, the country's most influential business group. Its chief executive will warn that the government must change course and take some difficult decisions to avoid death by 1,000 taxes, as they're going to frame it. And the former Chancellor, Sir Jeremy Hunt, told this programme a short time ago he predicts there'll be about £20 billion worth of tax rises and £5 billion in spending cuts.
The big central choice that Rachel Reeves has made is not to reform welfare, which, if she did it properly and seriously and got the welfare bill down to where it was just before the pandemic, not doable immediately, but over the course of the Parliament, perfectly realistic, we wouldn't have to put up a single tax. And indeed, she'd have quite a bit more headroom in her numbers. So I do think the trouble with tax rises is they hold back economic growth. And the central problem she faces, the exam question, the thing we all need her to solve is to get us out of our low growth trap. So I do very much disagree with the approach. What I would say, though, is that for all chancellors, this is quite a last-minute process. You don't get your final economic forecast from the Office for Budget Responsibility until about 3 weeks before the budget. What seems to have gone wrong this time is that all those last-minute changes have played out in public, and that gives an impression of chaos and incompetence.
Well, Mari is here to chat through all of it. We're finally in the kind of home straight. It feels like after all the leaks, all the briefings, all the kind of the fear that everyone's been feeling. Where are we at in Budget Week?
So 2 days in from the budget, away from the budget now, as Jeremy Hunt was outlining, it's been written, it's done, it's dusted. So in some ways, Rachel Reeves is in that kind of sweet spot where she knows what's going to happen, nothing more she can really do, and therefore she just kind of needs to sit tight and wait. Now, that would sound relaxing if it wasn't for the fact you had to sell this budget. You'll be losing sleep over how you're going to politically persuade your members, your MPs, voters at home, that these are the best decisions and that you are totally competent and can be trusted with, obviously, the economy and the public finances. And so really the job now at hand for Rachel Reeves is, as Jeremy Hunt was explaining to you, getting herself ready for all of the questions that people like yourselves will be asking her, all the different interviews that she's going to be doing, expecting what will be splashed on all the headlines, the kind of way that they might try to rip up her policies apart, and we're kind of preparing some of those defences in advance so that she's got her answers ready to go. And I think to an extent, you know, a lot of the kind of speculation, the pitch rolling that we've been hearing, a lot of the rhetoric we've been hearing is about the fact that difficult decisions have to be made, which is something that the CBI is also talking about this morning, and that actually it needs to be about fairness and the cost of living. And I think what's really interesting is they are saying that they've got a laser focus on making life more affordable for everyday people. And that also comes after that bizarre U-turn around income tax and not doing income tax. And clearly they thought about that and thought politically it would be difficult and obviously, of course, hard to sell. And it looks like a tax on working people, right? So.
Lots of speculation about what's happening. What we do know is that there's been one particular individual, high-profile individual, billionaire Lakshmi Mittal, kind of steel boss who has left the UK. And it was something that I spoke to Peter Kyle about, the business secretary, to see if he is worried about what Mario's thoughts there about, the increases in taxes that we're seeing having an impact on billionaires leaving the country.
Whenever anyone needs to leave the UK to succeed, I think it's a worry. What I don't want to do is be, as a country, just focus just on the billionaires, because there are other people that have needed to leave. There are people starting businesses that have gone to America because they haven't had the funding that they need in this country to succeed. And that is something that we are fundamentally stopping the need for by recapitalising the markets here and putting a lot of work in for those spin-outs and those start-ups, those scale-up companies.
Do you acknowledge that some of it is because of the tax decisions of this Labour government?
I do.
You do?
Yes,
is that a problem?
I do. Now, I'm not going to duck the fact that we have put up taxes and we've closed some of the loopholes for non-DOMs.
It was quite a surprising acknowledgement from him, do you think?
I think so. I thought he went into it trying to be more honest and more open than we often see from Labour politicians in these kind of spots. He was like, yeah, it's a worry. And yes, it is because of the tax decisions of this government.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there's more revelation in the next couple of days. But just for today, we hear from him at the CBI?
Yes, we're hearing from Peter Kyle and also Kemi Badenoch, both at the CBI. Both of them are going to be trying to persuade business leaders that they are the party to grow the economy and be fantastic allies of business. Of course, Conservatives always find it difficult to shake off those famous words that Boris Johnson said about business that I will not repeat on morning telly.
Yeah, don't say those ones.
And Labour, of course.
Is that where he talked about Peppa Pig?
That was the CBI, but that was a different moment. I'll leave you to do your Googling on that one.
Okay.
I won't give you any more information.
Well, the Peppa Pig thing was very damaging, wasn't it?
That was bizarre.
Came across as being...
Forgive me.
It's like a bit more of a sweary Peppa Pig, I think is probably the way to describe it.
Peppa Pig world. He was
Not great for morning TV. Murray, thanks very much.
Now, the White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, says tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. The talks were, of course, focusing on President Trump's 28-point plan, which has been panned by Ukraine and Europe as a capitulation to Russia.
And we're also waiting to hear if President Trump will meet European leaders like Keir Starmer in Washington. But there are reports this morning as well that President Zelensky might actually travel to the White House this week. This was Marco Rubio last night.
I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon. Whether it's Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Monday of the following week, we want it to be soon because people are going to, between today and the time we deal with this, more people are going to die. More destruction is going to happen. Our goal is to end this war as soon as possible, but we need a little more time.
More on those ongoing peace talks throughout the day as and when headlines come out of them. Now, David Cameron has revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer and has now been given the all clear.
The former Prime Minister told The Times he got the diagnosis after his wife, Samantha, urged him to make an appointment. And it was actually because she'd listened to an interview with Soho House's chief executive, Nick Jones, which then told... she heard it and then told her husband, right, go and get checked up, let's do it. And we're pleased to say that Nick actually joins us now.
Good morning.
How do you feel that it was literally your interview that led to that conversation between a husband and wife, just one that we know about, there might have been others, to go and get checked?
Well, I'm just a very small part in a big machine trying to get people to get screened. Obviously delighted for David. I think it's a shame that it takes a radio programme to get someone screened. I feel passionately for everyone in this country, men of certain ages should get screened.
The interview that David Cameron's given in the newspaper is very open, it's very revealing about the process he went through, not just getting checked, but finding out, you've got cancer and what you go through. That's something that you've been through yourself. How daunting was it?
Well, it is daunting, the whole process of hearing that word cancer. But I know, and I think lots of people know, that if you go and get it caught early, the chances of 100% survival is very high. So the anxiety you go through while you're going through the process is easily worth it with the result that you can get it cured.
And how are you now? How are you now?
I'm cancer-free. I'm very delighted to be cancer-free, and the reason why I'm talking about it is I feel I was really lucky. And when I looked into prostate screening in this country, or the lack of prostate screening and the lack of information available about prostate cancer, and the fact that it is the biggest killer of men in this country. 12,000 men a year die of prostate cancer. That's not with prostate cancer, that is of prostate cancer. I feel I had to try and use a very small platform I had to try and do something about it.
What is available to people who are watching now? I mean, we're not asking you to be the cancer doctor here, but what's the advice if you feel like you should be checked now, and what are you actually calling for? What does the government need to do that they're not doing?
Well, at the moment, you can go to your doctor and ask for a PSA. What often happens is the doctor, it's not in their guidelines to encourage this. So often the doctor will talk you out of having a PSA.
What is a PSA, sorry?
A PSA is the thing which catches whether you have prostate cancer. And who goes and self-checks? Who wants to go to the doctor and say, can you check for this? You usually go to the doctor when you have a pain. So that is what's available at the moment. And what should be available is like Brilliant Women in the 80s campaign for breast screening. And you get a letter, women get a letter at the age of 50 asking them to go and get a scan. And that's what should happen with men.
Yeah, this is what my mind goes to immediately, is the screening that we have, quite rightly, for breast cancer. And the fact that, the stats that you have about how deadly prostate cancer is for men, it does feel kind of incongruous that the same isn't happening. I mean, what kind of age do you think it should be done at then?
Well, it should be, if you're a black man, it should be 45, and a white man, you're 50. Black men are twice as likely to get prostate cancer than white men. There should be a screening programme. There's screening programmes for all other major cancers in this country. It seems like we're sitting here in 2025 and there isn't a screening programme. Just seems ridiculous. And the screening committee are meeting this week to make this decision. And I am asking Wes Streeting, our health secretary, to make sure the right decision is made.
And presumably you hope that David Cameron, following your lead, talking up about this will make a big difference.
Yes, I think any person in any sort of high-profile position talking about prostate cancer, because it is, men don't like talking about health, and this is a particularly subject that men really don't like talking about, and to try and encourage as many men to come out and talk about it, and women are much better at talking about their health than men, is a real progress. And I think there is a complete argument now to change the rules and at least have targeted men to have prostate screening.
I'm going to be really cheeky. I'm going to squeeze in a budget question at the end, if I
you?
may. Yeah, sorry, I can't resist it. You're a businessman. What are you hoping for later in the week?
Well, I'm hoping for growth. I'm hoping to, as someone who, I'm not chief executive of Soho House anymore, but I'm founder, but I'm hoping that whatever they do, they encourage people like myself to grow their businesses, which one will encourage jobs.
How do you do that?
Well, I think there's a number of ways you can do it. I think not hitting businesses anymore. I think they've been hit enough. Encouraging, just lots of encouraging things to be put businesses' way. And also, yes, we do need more tax, but we also, I'm a taxpayer, I really don't mind paying tax, but I don't like tax being wasted. And I think at the same time, they need to look at all the ways that our money that we're paying into the tax system is being wasted.
Nick, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for all that you do on the topic of prostate cancer.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much. It's been great to have you.
No doubt the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, is very grateful as well this morning.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about the build-up to that budget on Wednesday with Sam and Ed. Sam Coates and Ed Conway join us next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello, welcome back. The Chancellor is going to be putting the final touches to the budget this week ahead of Wednesday.
Jeremy Hunt told us earlier that there'll be light touches at this point and that most of the budget will be written now. Bethford Fiona Conway, our political and economic editors, have been to the room where it is all going on.
We're in the room where it happens. We're in the room where the budget decisions happen. I mean, I can't believe they've let us in here.
Do you want to play Chancellor?
Well, I think if I sit here through osmosis, will I get into her head and work out what's in the budget? You've got quite difficult decisions to make, rather her than me. We talk a lot about this book, the Red Book, and the reason we do is in that book is the scorecard, and that kind of explains everything to us, but just explain that.
All the scorecard is this, it's a table, it's kind of a spreadsheet. When they're working it out, when they're working on it in this room, which they're doing, they've got a spreadsheet up, sometimes it's on laptops, sometimes they'll put it on the screen there. And in that spreadsheet is everything, like here's what's going to happen to income tax, here's what's going to happen to national insurance, here's what's going to happen to all of the different measures. And that is why, on budget day itself, in the afternoon, when we get this document...
That's all we want, isn't it?
It's what we flick to straight away, and it's like, right, what are the numbers? What's the biggest measure?
Because what it tells us is it will tell us where was the biggest tax raising measure, where was the most spending, where did she put the money.
So
OK, Ed Conway,
all right, yeah.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds in which you are going to unpack the big picture of the economy, this budget, and what it means for the Chancellor.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
Well...
We didn't hear it.
We didn't hear it because we've got him here to do it again live. But
it was that quick.
Yeah. Now around a different table. Before we get to that, Ed's with us, obviously. Sam's about to join us as well from the CBI conference. Which of you was sitting in the Chancellor's chair there? Chancellor Rigby.
Beth got the Chancellor's chair. So I was sitting opposite her as a kind of supplicant doing the kind of... That basically, where you were sitting, that is kind of where people go in and they run through the scorecard. So that's the budget. They're running through, here are all the measures we can do, here's what we can afford, here's what we can't afford. And so there was a bit of a charged atmosphere in there. And we were literally there in between budget meetings as they are putting the finishing touches to this.
So you were playing literally the guy with the spreadsheets?
Yeah, I was playing the guy with the spreadsheets. Beth was playing the Chancellor. And alas, we were not allowed to bring our phones into the room. I did kind of think about accidentally leaving my phone in there on record for the next meeting, but that was not. That did not happen.
That would be a little bit deceptive.
Maybe a little bit. That's a joke. I should be clear, that is a joke.
Were you hunting around for any clues, like any kind of markings on the table where people have written?
We had a little look. But to be honest with you, so much of this has been briefed already, and I think the other key thing is, it's not really decided until the very last minute. I think now it's basically, you're getting to that point where it's nailed down now. But, as of that, when we were recording it last week, it wasn't fully decided. And this has been such a roller coaster in the run-up. A lot of stuff was in, then it was out, and we know because a lot of it's been done kind of in public. So where they get to is another question.
One of the other things we're going to get, of course, on Wednesday is the forecasts that the Office of Budget Responsibility, the independent body that will give their forecasts of growth going forward. And we're able to bring in Sam now, because Sam had a massive scoop this morning on politics at Sam and Anne's. And Sam, talk us through that. We're going to get these forecasts on Wednesday, and what's your expectations going to be in them?
So, as you say, Wilf, what's going to happen with growth? What's going to happen with GDP is a massive part of Budget Day, because the Office of Budget Responsibility lays out what it predicts for the next few years. And I understand
that next year and every subsequent year in this Parliament, there's going to be a growth downgrade compared to the last time the OBR did their report in the spring. And, let's be honest, it's just not a great look when a government that comes in saying its biggest priority is growth to see successive downgrades to growth. Now, they've got a bit of a story to tell, I think. They're going to say that growth this year, 2025, ever so slightly higher than they were expecting, pulling forward some of the growth from next year, and that they will make the case that the measures that they undertake in the budget, well, they're not responsible for lowering growth, but ultimately, for the rest of the Parliament, this productivity downgrade that Ed's been talking about, the fact that the economy is just on trend going to do less well, will be reflected in those GDP numbers. So it is just a bit of a problem, I think, for Rachel Reeves, building on all of the other issues and problems and drama, quite frankly, that we've seen in the lead up to Wednesday's budget.
It certainly won't be a nice headline for them. Ed, it's interesting because we've been speaking about this over the last week. There's also a big difference to this tax-raising budget to a year ago because we're not expecting the tax increases to be funding spending increases. They're having to put up taxes for a different reason.
Yeah, and I think this is the difficult thing. OK, so what we're probably going to hear about on Wednesday is a host of different measures, much of which will be couched as a kind of, we're trying to make the economy more functional. So we're going to sort out the council tax system and make it so that people with higher value homes end up paying more because this hasn't, the valuations of the homes haven't been revalued since the 1990s. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, given this is our biggest property tax. I think the issue that she faces when she, and that's not the only thing, there's this, as it's been, termed, a smorgasbord of all of these different policies that's going to come out. But here's the challenge for her. I think, back in the day, if this was all coming last year, then she could have, I think, quite reasonably said, well, here is our new agenda. We've come into government, we're going to take the difficult decisions, and we are going to sort out all of this stuff which all previous governments have been too afraid to actually do. But the issue is that, first of all, she's not doing that in her first budget, it's her second budget. Secondly, it's kind of blindingly obvious to everyone that this is done in order to fill up a hole. And the hole is partly because the forecasts, as you heard from Sam, are a little bit worse. But actually, it's also partly because a lot of the measures that they hoped they would get through, they can't get through, whether it's kind of stuff on winter fuel, whether it's welfare reform, and indeed, they've got extra spending they want to do on the two-child benefit cap. So you put all of that together, and it's like, it doesn't look like a coherent kind of attempt to try to change the structure of the economy. It kind of looks like they are trying to tidy up some of the mess that they've made themselves. And that is slightly less compelling, I think, for everyone, watching. And that's before you get to the question of, well, people didn't necessarily vote for some of this stuff. It wasn't explicitly in the manifesto, and therefore, does it have the backing that you might have previously thought?
It's interesting. I want to just bring Sam in as well, from your kind of perspective there at the kind of business conference, because on the programme this morning, we've been speaking to a couple of business leaders from ITSU, from Soho House, and the message that they are all giving is that, look, things are really, really, really tough out there, and businesses need a break. And look, people listening, a lot of them will be like, yeah, this is businesses lobbying, obviously, come on, they do this in front of every budget. Do you think that is it, or do you think there's something different this time?
Oh, I think there is something different. I was very struck that Peter Kyle said to you that because of the decisions that Labour have taken, people have left the country, Sophie. And, it's a little bit of the backdrop of this budget. Look, business will always lobby, business will always ask for lower taxes. But the bottom line is that the number one priority this government said it wanted is growth. And it was at this conference, the CBI conference a year ago, that Rachel Reeves stood up and she said there won't be more tax rises and much more borrowing in future budgets because of the decisions she took a year ago. She's trying to draw a line under last year's tax rises, which angered business quite a lot. And now she's back having to beg for forgiveness because she's going to go through it all again. She's not actually here at the CBI conference. She's left that to Peter Kyle, who'll be along here in a little bit. But the truth is, kind of as Ed was saying, this isn't really a budget for growth. There's £17 billion of additional welfare spending having to be funded by essentially middle and higher earner tax rises. It's a save our skin budget for the government. This is about plugging political gaps and making sure that Labour MPs feel good about themselves in a really very challenging situation for Keir Starmer, where even his own team acknowledge that there's a chance of a challenge after the budget because of unhappiness in the Labour ranks. So whether it's the two-child benefit cap, the triple lock state pension increase, whether it's spending money on welfare that they couldn't get through because of Labour MPs' revolt, or the undoing of the winter fuel cuts, all of those things are about shoring up Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves politically. Growth seems to be a second-order priority on Wednesday.
Thanks, Sam.
Ed, well, I think we're kind of out of time, sadly, on this, but just very quickly, the 20 billion number that Jeremy Hunt came up with, does that sound about right to you?
I mean, it looks like it at the moment, but that's another one of those things that's been yo-yoing around. And if they have to do that, it's still a lot of money, and it's very hard to get that much money through a lot of little itty-bitty tax rises. That's going to be the challenge, and I think, is it going to be another omni-shambles budget? That's what we're going to be trying to find out.
To Ed and Sam, fantastic stuff, and we're looking forward to much more of the same in the next couple of days. So much to build up to still. Now, is your fitness tracker doing more harm than good? We'll talk about that huge trend in wearable tech and its implications next. Welcome back. A reminder of all of the top stories this hour. The White House's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, says tremendous progress has been made in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva. The US Secretary of State has admitted there's still work to be done after meeting Ukrainian and European negotiators. There are reports this morning that President Zelensky may travel to the White House this week.
David Cameron's revealed he's been treated for prostate cancer but has been given the all clear. The former Prime Minister told The Times that he got the diagnosis after his wife Samantha urged him to make an appointment, and he's now joined others in calling for a national screening programme on the NHS.
And there's mounting speculation over the contents of the Chancellor's budget, which is revealed on Wednesday. She's facing a warning from the country's most influential business group, the CBI, who are urging her to change course over her plans to avoid putting British business under tax pressure and to get the country's finances back on track.
So could you do it better, is the question we're now asking. And so is Jo Mays, who's the author of the interactive book, Can You Run the Economy? There we go. I like this as well. This is your kind of red box,
It's
right?
my budget box. I have the budget here, ready to reveal.
We'll just put the book down if we can. It's great to have the actual budget box. And so this is, as we said, an interactive book. I was sort of expecting it to be digital only, to be fully interactive. But this is step by step, and you offer up people questions of can you or can't you make this decision?
Yes, I mean, I let you become Chancellor. I give you £20 billion to play with at the start of the book, which is a lot more than Rachel Reeves has, and you have to make decisions, set tax policy, make spending decisions, manage your relationship with the Prime Minister, and the aim is to win a general election at the end of the book. And, yeah, that's how it works.
Do you get judged on whether you're going to win or not, then?
Yes, you get reactions in the polls to your decisions. You go up and down. And if things are going too badly, you risk being fired by the Prime Minister. But if things are going well, you will ultimately win the election. It's difficult.
This is a game that is designed for Sophie, me, Conway, and
This has got Morning's team Christmas party written all over it.
I think in the book you do get interviewed on Sky News, so as Chancellor you have to be ready for that moment as well.
Gosh, you're really appealing to us. I like it. So having gone through this process, you know, politics requires people to win votes. It requires good administrative skills. Chancellor, you know, requires obviously economic understanding. What are some of the key characteristics in your assessment that a great Chancellor needs to have?
I think you really need to be prepared to become unpopular. You need to take decisions which might initially receive significant public blowback, but which ultimately, perhaps years down the line, will bear fruit. And that's so difficult in this 24-hour media cycle, all the headlines, all the pressure against you. I think the best chancellors have resisted that as much as they can in the hope that just before the election in a few years' time, things turn around and they ultimately win.
Yeah, this is it. I agree with you on that, actually. And I think it can be quite counterintuitive. But I just think give the public more credit than you tend to, right? People respect you if you're doing what you think is right, if you're taking difficult decisions and you're making an argument for it, right? And I think that one of the difficulties with this Labour government is that often they do things because they're like, oh, we have to do this because of the Tories or because of the economic circumstances, not because we want to do it, we think it's right. So then you give away your autonomy almost.
Yeah, I think I interviewed Jeremy Hunt and 4 other chancellors for this book, and he said to me that the real trade-off as Chancellor is between the short term and the long term, not necessarily between spending on the NHS or the military, but more, can you do the thing which in maybe 5, 10, 15 years' time bears fruit? You may not see the benefit of that as a politician, but the country will. I think that's the hardest thing.
So what one of those decisions would you do if you were Chancellor then?
Well, I think
long-term, idea.
I mean, to Jeremy Hunt's credit, he had the full expensing tax break a few years back, which was making capital investment fully tax deductible. That would take 5, 10 years to bear fruit. And the Tories obviously lost the 2024 election. And you could argue that if he'd spent that money on an immediate tax cut, perhaps the Tories might have fared better. So I think that was a pretty public-spirited thing that he did as Chancellor. I think that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Do you go into the OBR, this is getting a bit geeky, the Office for Budget Responsibility, who have to kind of mark up the Chancellor's homework both before and afterwards? Do you get into that in the book? And in particular, a question that a lot of people have now is the amount of power and influence this unelected body has over the elected politicians.
Yes, that is a key part of the book in that your forecasts change as you're going through. So you might think you're in quite a good position, but then suddenly the OBR have a downgrade and such, you're £5 billion less. And that's exactly what Rachel Reeves is facing. So that just is a reality of living in a world where forecasts are being set, not by you, the Treasury, as they were in the past, but by an independent body. So yes, you do have to respond to that.
And I've got to ask, have you run Rachel Reeves through the book? Have you basically mapped out, the decisions that she's made and seen what happens? Can you tell us into the future, basically?
So I interviewed Rachel Reeves for the book. She very kindly gave me an interview. I've given her a copy, and when I gave it to her, she said, "Oh, I don't need this, my MPs do." So I think that she knows that they are perhaps on a journey of understanding how difficult the choices are that she's facing.
That's so she's basically throwing a bit of shade on the welfare rebels.
But this is really fascinating because I guess this comes back to your long-term, short-term point, and it comes back to the key thing we've been discussing for weeks, which is: do you pull if it's a given that you've got to put taxes up, do you pull one of the big levers and take some political pain because you might break a manifesto pledge, or do lots of small things that have more economic pain? Is that what she was getting at, do you think?
Yeah, I think that she knows she has this big manifesto promise that is like an albatross around her neck. She'd love to lift it off and perhaps raise one of those big taxes. And indeed, the question of the headroom she builds against her fiscal rules, I think former chancellors say what she really should have done is built it up nice and big at the start of the parliament and then kind of gradually spend it down over the course. Instead, she's doing this kind of part one, part two budget where we're fixing the foundations twice, and that's a hard story to tell to the electorate.
You're never as powerful as when you're first elected, both with the public but with your own MPs as well. They'd have voted for a whole load more stuff at the beginning, wouldn't they? It's true. Really interesting to have you on. Love it.
Thank you.
Great to have you on.
Thanks very much. We really appreciate it. Now, the Paralympics leadership and the UK government are at odds over reinstating Russia or not into the Games.
So the UK, if you remember, was one of 34 countries to sign a joint statement expressing serious concern. This is over the International Paralympic Committee lifting the partial suspensions of Russia and also of its ally Belarus.
The decision hasn't been explained until now, but IPC President Andrew Parsons tells Sky News it's not linked to participation in wars. Rob Harris explains.
As Ukraine faces pressure to accept a peace deal, Russia is already starting to be brought in from the cold by sport. The Paralympics lifting bans on Russia and war ally Belarus despite the conflict continuing, because it's now being claimed the invasion itself was never the reason for the ban. As for the first time since the countries were reinstated, the president of the International Paralympic Committee explains the decision to Sky News.
Russia and Belarus, they use Paralympic sport to promote their participation in the war, in the conflict. And this is what led to the first suspension, the suspension in 23. Between 23 and now, in the discussion went around, obviously there is less evidence of that being used again for the promotion of the war. So this was important to clarify to our own membership, but also it has to do with the statement that was put out.
That's the statement criticising the Paralympic decision from a coalition of governments. They said, "We view this development with serious concern, given that the Russian aggression against Ukraine continues and the Russian and Belarusian breaches of the Olympic Charter remain." But this is what the IPC is now disputing, claiming their decision has been misunderstood by ministers. And as a global movement, it's facing questions within about inconsistencies banning some countries and not others at war.
The reason why we take action and propose the membership to suspend nations or not is not linked to participation in wars. The majority of the membership, they were expressing these views. Why only Russia and Belarus? And why not punish others if the case is only the war? Which, again, it's not. It's breach of the constitution.
But for the International Olympic Committee, bans on Russia and Belarus remain. Just this week, the United Nations adopted the Olympic truce for next year's Winter Games in Italy, a platform used by Ukraine to speak out.
The international community must maintain the suspension of Russian and Belarusian athletes from international sports competitions. Allowing their participation would undermine the integrity of sport as a contributor to peace, condone the ongoing killing of Ukrainian athletes and their coaches, and show disrespect to the hundreds of members of Ukraine's sports community who have been killed, injured, or displaced by this war.
Russia won't have a team at the Milan Cortina Winter Paralympics, largely because individual sports maintain their own bans. But it seems increasingly likely the Los Angeles 2028 Games will mark the end of Russia's exile after more than a decade of punishments for doping and war by the Olympics and Paralympics. Rob Harris, Sky News.
And Rob will have more on that story throughout the day, I'm sure. In the meantime, wearable technology. So this is basically, well, does what it says on the tin. It's tech that you can wear, and it allows us to track all kinds of things, from the number of steps you do to what we eat and how we sleep.
But some health researchers are urging restraint, arguing excessive tracking can lead to anxiety. So is your fitness tracker doing more harm than good? Let's discuss it. We're joined now by the journalist Laurel Blackett, who's written about excessive tracking. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning to you both.
So what is the sort of general point in this? That initially this tech was groundbreaking and helpful, but it's now so comprehensive that people perhaps rely on it too much? Is that the point?
Yeah, that is the point. I think it is still groundbreaking and intelligent, and it's giving us more information than we've ever had before. But I asked, is there a thing of knowing a bit too much about ourselves? I think we're a bit more into wellness, even more than we ever have been before. And we've gotten so much more insight into our health. And I had to ask myself, as a tracking obsessive, is this too much? So
I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to all this stuff. I don't have any of it. Can say what kind of stuff do you track then?
I have to admit, I track everything. So it can be as simple as tracking my steps, my fitness goals. I'm one of those people who starts a new fitness goal every other month. I track my sleep. I track my blood oxygen.
And this is all just like by wearing like a watch or something like that?
Just a watch, just my watch. But I would love to invest even in the newer technology, which has made it even smaller in ring size form. I really get a bit of a kick out of the information and the fact that I'm doing good, because it tells you if you're doing enough. And I like to know that I'm doing enough for my health.
Which are the parts of it that you think are causing anxiety for people? Like what crosses the line from being helpful information that can lead you to lead a better life to being you're going to become anxious from this?
So when I wrote this article, I think I used myself as a case study.
Yeah.
It's just the way I interact with my wearable tech. So if I haven't hit the goals or the arbitrary goals that I've set for myself, I feel like I've disappointed myself somewhat. So when I don't get my 10K steps, I feel like I should walk around the block when maybe it's 9 o'clock at night, maybe I should stay at home. So it's this feeling where I have to hit that goal. And those goals can, for some people, for different personality traits, can lead to a bit more of an obsessive sort of tracking, skipping out on events because you want to get a certain sort of macros in your food, for example, not going to certain events because you have to hit some sort of fitness goal in the morning. And it's when it becomes a priority in your life over everything else is when I think you have to take
That makes
caution.
sense. I mean, if life is a thing to be enjoyed, then you can just see, like, if you're getting worried about stuff that's causing you anxiety, then it can be an issue. Can I ask something that might be really stupid? How do we know this works? I don't understand. How does a watch or a ring know what you're doing?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So I think
what are they tracking?
Exactly. I think this idea, wellness being something that is measurable, I think this has come into our lives in the last, I guess, maybe 10 years ago or so. So this idea that I have great blood oxygen levels, that I never knew what that was before. I never had an interest in my own blood oxygen levels, but now I can know if this is good or bad just based off my wearable tech. And I think we have so much more information now that can tell us if we are on the right track. And we actually don't know if this is actually, just how accurate this is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is it regulated? Like, how can they... You're probably a bit more into the... I just don't understand.
The one I find weird is sleep,
yeah.
Which is, I mean, I know if I've had a good or bad night's sleep anyway.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted or I'm not. And if you wake up and it says you've had a bad night's sleep, what are you going to do? Go back to bed? You've got to get up anyway.
Yeah, so it's going to make you less likely to drop off.
It's an interesting... Whereas, if you're in the gym and you want to track, your performance, it's slightly more, reasonable. But anyway, I mean, a lot of people do track sleep.
Yes, a lot of people track sleep. And I think, to your point, if you've had a good night's sleep, you'll likely know about it. I have spoken to my partner. I have this stress tracker that tells me if I'm stressed, I should already know.
Yeah.
But there's some...
probably going to make...
Thanks for letting me know I'm stressed. I'm really stressed about that.
Yeah. But there's something kind of validating to have something like agree with you. It agrees.
Or
it knows
stress-inducing.
Yeah, well, maybe, and this was the point of the article, maybe that is stress-inducing itself. Maybe you're just a bit hot, I don't know. Women go through different cycles. It might be a different time in your cycle, and maybe why your levels are elevated somewhat. And sometimes it can't be that accurate. Sometimes you have to take in your actual real-life lived experience over what this technology says.
Laurel, really interesting stuff. Thanks so much for joining us on it. Much appreciated.
Great to have you on. Thank you. And now a new transparency feature launched on X, the social media website, is exposing a more accurate identity of the people behind some well-known and particularly controversial accounts.
The new feature allows users to see where an account is based, exposing those claiming to be, for example, MAGA, Make America Great Again, accounts that are, in fact, foreign-run bots. And this has gone a lot. Have you seen lots of people screenshotting this over the weekend, saying, gosh, this account that we all thought was based here isn't, in fact... Do you know what the sort of offset of it is, though? Someone's then screenshotted the Ridge Frost account, which apparently this new feature on X says is based in America. It's not, I can assure you.
That's quite funny.
So
it's just the country then, is it? Is that what it is?
I don't know, because I don't know exactly how... but it's... I don't know, I don't know where it was set up or where the person is based most often. But weirdly, what someone has pointed out for our show's account highlights that perhaps it's not perfect as a transparency tool anyway.
That's definitely not right, unless we've got like a whole other team in America.
Unless like the person, when it was set up, maybe they happened to be on holiday in America. Who set it up? I don't know. We don't. All I can say is it's.
Well, I think it was the old Politics Hub account and the old Sophy Ridge on Sunday account.
So.
Anyway, this is a whole other tangent. Sorry. But actually, genuinely, I think there is a serious point to this, right? Because part of the issue, I think, with social media companies or websites in particular is that you just don't know how genuine somebody is, right? You know, if they are a bot, if they are a viewer genuinely interacting with you or whatever. And so I think that does actually change the conversations that you have as well.
I think it's a really big step and genuine step to try and deliver more transparency without going as far as, you know, mandating that all accounts have to be officially, you know, approved in terms of uploading your passport or uploading your driver's license or whatever. And it's just... Oddly, what's showing is perhaps it's not a perfect step towards transparency, even if it is an attempted and genuine attempt at doing so.
Exactly. Coming up, we're going to be talking about sport. We'll probably be banging on about Arsenal again, I'd imagine. But also, Luke Littler has had a big achievement that we're going to be chatting about with Jackie as well.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the onboard lounge.
Flying minutes. Fly better. Thank you.
Well, it feels like there was an awful lot of important football matches for the Premier League over the weekend. Jackie's here to talk us through it all. You know, Man City and Liverpool both losing, but Arsenal...
Emphatically winning.
Emphatically winning, it's got to be said. I feel like I'm the one non-Arsenal fan around the table, so I'm slightly outnumbered. But it was a moment.
Do you know the North London Forever song now? North London Forever, North London Forever.
I mean, I would sing
Very
it,
good.
but I don't think it would help our ratings.
It's good though. It was really sort of emotional yesterday, and they obviously ramped up the volume to scare Spurs, who'd come with a very defensively set-up team, and then they were taken apart bit by bit. But Eze, I mean, fantastic hat-trick. They happen very rarely in a North London derby. In fact, hasn't happened for almost 50 years. And you know, new signing for Arsenal in the summer. Fans loved him anyway because he turned down Spurs. He was almost about to join, and he was asked about it in his post-match interview, and he said, let's not talk about that. And then he goes and does this, which is basically Eze taking the handbrake off. One of the pundits said, you know, I feel like he's playing with a bit of restraint, a bit of a handbrake, and yesterday it definitely came off with those goals. He took the game by the scruff of the neck, and I love it when people do that. It's really exciting. Richarlison's goal was the longest goal so far this season, and will probably be, you know, possibly goal of the season, or definitely a contender for. But it was just a consolation in the end, and so many questions for Spurs. I mean, they were toothless, really, and that manner in which Arsenal won, I think, was a good message for everybody, and to be 6 points clear, 7 clear of Man City, because they dropped points at the weekend, and then 11 clear of the champions, Liverpool.
Long way to go.
Long way to go. And Arteta said the cushion's not enough. You know, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't make any difference at this point. And he's right, it doesn't, because Arsenal have been in this position before. But it just, I don't know.
Feels different, you think?
It just feels different. The way they are playing is different.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Eze's just such a likeable character. And what I love as well, you know, clearly Arsenal didn't put him at the top of the list this summer. He was the signing that came towards the end. And yet he has this... This is what a lot of the fans are referring... He just has this deep, deep love of Arsenal, and it showed yesterday.
Well, he played there as a kid, you know. He was there as, you know, when they joined the junior ranks as an 8-year-old. He was a big Arsenal fan, and he was in their, you know, their youth academy, and then they let him go. Then he was at several other academies. And then, you know, he was at Crystal Palace. Before that, he was at QPR, and then thought he was going to join Tottenham, and he was very close to joining Tottenham. And it was a phone call to Arteta from him saying, I want to join Arsenal.
And to be honest, I'm also, I have to say, I'm quite pleased that Palace have done well without him as well. Because I always feel a bit of a pang, to be honest, when you see these great players who've done so well for their clubs just be poached and swept up by the bigger clubs, and maybe they're like not even starting, they're second or third. It's kind of a bit galling sometimes, but Palace have just done so well anyway.
Done so well. And by the way, Palace fans still love him as well, which is a testament to how much he was liked. Like, he left, but on good terms. And they were 4th, 5th, aren't they?
Well, he did great stuff for Palace. And, now sort of finding his groove at Arsenal as well. I mean, just goes to show that maybe Arsenal should not have let him go as a 13 or whatever it was. It was a really important win for Arsenal. I think a big statement.
You've got an exciting interview later, haven't you, Jackie?
Well, I hope it's exciting. Going off to interview Luke Littler, who I've never spoken to before, and we've talked about him a lot on this show at Sky News, because he's such a great story, isn't it? Schoolboy, you know, 16-year-old, gets to the final of the World Championships at the first attempt. Then the next year he goes on and wins it. And then last night he won his first Players' Championship, and he's got all these big trophies that he just keeps winning for fun and, you know, building up the money.
Bring up a tangent of something Jackie told us about. Are you going to put an apple on your head?
Oh, no, this just makes me feel ill.
Tell us the story.
No, I probably shouldn't. So when I interviewed Phil the Power Sailor years ago, I think he just won his 6th world title or something, and I went to his pub where he practices, and I thought it'd be fun to do a piece to camera with an apple on my head and then get him to throw darts at it, because it would be a good piece to camera. People would remember it. And what were the chances of him missing?
And you
small.
did it. You did it.
Yeah, you didn't miss.
Oh, I can't.
I did do that a little bit.
I can't even.
No, he just got the apple, it fell apart. And that I got so told off by Sky Sports, though.
I'm not surprised.
We are not insured for that sort of thing. That sort of thing.
Didn't really happen. It's just a joke.
Luke,
just joking.
If you're watching, you do not have permission to do this. If Jackie's feeling bold again, don't do it.
But under pressure, he does throw his best darts.
Well,
I mean, when he's under real pressure, he doesn't miss.
We flagged it in advance this time, so I'm sure you'll get an email to say you're not allowed to do that, Jackie, because we want to see you back with the interview to come, which we're looking forward to.
But he's a good story.
Oh,
I mean,
he's brilliant.
In sport, that rarely happens. It's so rare that someone goes from school kid to world champion, world #1 in 18 months. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Jackie, great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jackie.
We are out of time. We have got lots more coverage, of course, throughout the day on those ongoing peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, and headlines from that CBI conference ahead of the budget. Don't go anywhere.